decision by the city unless the applicant appeals to the city council. You'll need to contact the city clerk or community development department staff for details on those council hearings. The applicant will be given this evening 10 minutes to present their request after presentation by staff. Proponents and then opponents are allowed to speak with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. The applicant will then be given 5 minutes for rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed, and after motion, the commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the issue under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed. There are 2 of those tonight, and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or a member of the commission requests the item be removed from the consent agenda and separately considered under the public hearing agenda. And while I'm at it, we're going to ask everybody, if you've got your cell phones on, turn them off. The City of Des Moines is pleased to provide accommodations to individuals or groups with disabilities and encourages participation in city government. To better serve you, when possible, please notify us at least 3 business days in advance at area code 515-283-4209 should special accommodations be required. Assistive listening devices are available for the meetings in the council chambers. The Planning and Zoning Commission meetings are also broadcast on Mediacom Cable Channel 7 for customers with that service. The broadcasts are also streamed live on real time at the City of Des Moines website at www.dmgov.org. You need to click the Watch Live link for those meetings. We have a quorum. Quorum being present. Everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Any discussion? It's been moved. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. By acclamation, Kathy. We're going to take up the consent portion of this evening's agenda. Number 1 is a request from SPTIHS Property Trust, doing business as Union Park Health Services, represented by David Hagerty, to rezone property located at 2401 East 8th Street. Is there anyone here in opposition to that item? In opposition to that item this evening? Seeing none, any of the council desire to remove it? Okay. The second item is a request from Eagle Ironworks, 129 East Holcomb, represented by Gary Krantz, for vacation of the remaining portions of the east-west segment of the alley between, is it Regard Street and East Holcomb Avenue, running west of Oxford Street. Is there anyone that wants that item in opposition to that item that they want it removed tonight? Do you want it removed from the consent portion, sir? All right. That'll be removed. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move.
All right. It's moved. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. By acclamation, it's passed.
Before we move on, Chair, if I may, item 5, they requested continuance to the 17th.
That's what I understood. I was about to ask you. You just beat me to the... Item 5 is a request from James Sarcone to rezone property located at 4506 Southwest 9th Street. The subject property is owned by David Holmes. Is there anyone here on that item tonight? Anyone to speak on that item? The request has been made to continue this to January 17th. You're welcome to speak tonight if you'd like, but truthfully, I would suggest coming back on the 17th. All right? Do I have a motion? Continue this? Greg? All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation again passes. It's continued to the 17th. So we're going to go ahead and start with item number 2. Jason, are you presenting on this one?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, well, that's, yeah. Might just as well.
provision of any easement for utilities, if there are any. At this time, we're not aware of any, but if some come up, then of course we'd want easements provided for those utilities. So happy to answer any questions.
Jason, I do have a question. I understand that this business has been sold.
I'm not 100% sure. What I understand is they're putting the site together and it may be a part of a marketing plan and ownership. Obviously, if you're going to be selling or buying property, if part of the site, the function of it depends upon right-of-way that you don't own, then that's what has brought them forward through our process.
The reason why I said that is I understand they've closed the plant and that people have all been laid off. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Is the applicant present? Please come forward and give us your name and address.
Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, I'm Christopher Talcott. I'm here from the Davis Brown Law Firm. We represent Eagle Ironworks LLC. Our office at 215 10th Street, Suite 1300, Des Moines, 50309. That's right. This property did sell, and actually, as Mr. Van Essen noted, the reason this came to light is when the property was getting sold, they got a title examination done, realized that it appeared that this paper alley had never been vacated properly. The property sold to another company, it's EIW LLC. It's kind of closed, subject to this title issue getting cleared up. Don't have too much else to add to what the city staff report shows other than that. I think this property, most of this land has been owned by the same company for well over 40 plus years. And I don't know if this ever was, in fact, an alley. This has been a parking lot for as far, as long back as we know. So really this is just a matter of cleaning up the title and getting, clear title to this little vacated alley that's on paper. It's not going to affect any traffic flow or any change in use or anything like that. It's just a matter of clearing up title. Happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? In favor of the application, please come forward. Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. Please state your name and address, sir.
John Morrissey, 2913 Oxford Street. I've asked you to reconsider this item this evening because the vacation is in furtherance of a plan that apparently nobody in the room really knows what's afoot. I sincerely wish that Eagle Ironworks had stayed as an operating company, but we're past that now, apparently. This site is 2 blocks away from North High School. It's 3 blocks away from Finley. It's 6 blocks away from Harding. The highest and best use of this property, if it is not going to be used for industrial purposes, it seems to me is residential, particularly, in fact, in light of the fact that the levee has been reconstructed now, which offers the properties to the north of the river flood protection, which they've not enjoyed in the past. If it is in fact the case that another company is going to purchase this property and resume operations as an industrial concern, I would certainly be willing to entertain a temporary easement of 10 years or until such time as the property is sold again. But I don't believe I'm prepared to accept a conveyance of this property when we don't really know what's going to happen here. And it's very important for the people in this particular neighborhood to I think, have a say in what happens in the properties that were destroyed by the flood. And in this instance, those residents have not received that consideration. Thank you.
Before you step down, does anyone here have any questions, John? Okay, thank you, John. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, Do you need some rebuttal time? I didn't see him. Oh, there he is.
I guess, ladies and gentlemen, I guess I just add, I don't know that it's really known exactly what the buyer is going to do with this company. You know, that's another company that's out of state, I think. I don't really represent them, but I just point out that whoever buys this land, and if it were ever to be developed for any other purpose, this issue is going to have to be cleared up. So at some point, this alley is going to have to be dealt with, and now we have a buyer who needs to get this taken care of, otherwise, you know, the land would sit vacant. I don't know what else will happen to it. It's really a cleanup work from something that's, you know, the title work that was pretty much done a long time ago, just cleaning it up. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Any questions?
Is it your understanding the neighborhood association is in support of this?
I don't know that we've heard anything one way or the other.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Do I have a motion? Mike's moving staff. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. One in opposition. We have abstentions. One abstention. Yours? Just Jack? Okay. Got it? All right. It passes. Moving on to item number 3. It's a request from Union Pacific Railroad for vacation of the following 4 segments of street right-of-way where the railroad right-of-way intersects. This would result in termination of the public street on either side of the railroad, thereby closing it to through traffic. Property number 1 is Hull Avenue between Delaware Avenue and Dixon. Property, I guess it's B, would be Scott Avenue between Southeast 20th Street and Southeast 22nd Street. Item C would be Southeast 34th Street between Scott Avenue and East Court Avenue. And item D would be Southeast 36th Street at a point north of Scott Avenue. Jason, you presenting on this one?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Chair, members of the commission, Jason Van Essen, the city's planning staff. Tonight with this item, I'll give a brief introduction, but we're going to do something a little different with the complexity of it all. We do have a PowerPoint that the applicant is going to present to you that covers a lot of what's gone on with this project, and giving the magnitude of the project and all that's gone into it with regard to public meetings, neighborhood meetings and stuff. We felt that it was appropriate with your blessing to kind of change things up. I'll do an intro, we'll have them do a presentation. I'll give kind of the more standard staff report, or really more of a summary recommendation, then do answers, you know, if you have any questions for us, and then to public comment, if that sounds good with everybody.
Jason, I'm just trying to figure out how long is this PowerPoint, because obviously the rules say that you get 10 minutes to present the request.
I think the PowerPoint itself will be around 10 minutes.
All right, that'd be great.
But the key here is we didn't want to do a 5:30 session and not have the public be confused as to what was presented to you, and given the need to keep everybody in the loop, we felt it was important to do it this way. So.
But I wanted understood that if we're going to give them additional time, I expect to give additional time to opposition as well. Okay.
Just to get everybody familiar with the locations, we'll have a lot more maps and they'll be presented to you. This is the Hull Avenue crossing Delaware Avenue, Hull Avenue to the west, Dixon Street further west, Southeast 34th and 36th Street, Scott Avenue to the south, Dean Avenue's a little to the north, not showing up on this map. The other area that I don't anticipate that we'll spend as much time on is Scott Avenue over by Southeast 22nd Street. This area is already vacated. This is Kemen, and that was vacated and barricaded off some time ago. There's actually a barricade on this side to keep people from entering and becoming stuck. So this right here is probably all that you really hear about that crossing. In 2012, Union Pacific came forward with the idea or the thought of these 4 crossings being closed. And I won't go into detail. I'll let them explain the purposes behind that. But given the magnitude of something along those lines, we encouraged them to go through a process of having some pre-neighborhood meetings. You know, normally we have people submit their application to us already for a vacation or a rezoning, and then we direct them between that submittal and the meeting to have their neighborhood meeting. But given the complexity of this, we suggested they take some time before they even submit an application to hold some neighborhood meetings that we would help them facilitate. We had 2 meetings in July in the Southeast 34th. We had one for the Southeast 34th, 36th area. We had a second one in the Whole Avenue area. We had some follow-up. We took the input from those meetings, and that'll be discussed further, so I won't try not to repeat. And then went back, evaluated things, and had a follow-up meeting at the Botanical Center in November. We also had a small group meeting with some business owners in the Whole Avenue area to discuss specifically their concerns with movement. But with that, I think what I'll go ahead and do is turn it over to the Union Pacific crew to come up here and go through their PowerPoint.
When you come forward, please give us your names and addresses.
Yeah, and before I switch over to the PowerPoint, we have, as you can imagine, we've done a lot of notice. And so we had, very large notice areas, so we have response cards that I'll pass around. There was also an email that you have from the Fairgrounds Neighbor Association, along with 4 letters of support that you have in front of you as well that were provided by the applicant. So I'll pass this. You'll have the letters, but I'll pass the cards around. But I encourage you to focus on the presentation.
No, do we have the Fairgrounds letter, Jason?
You should have it on your, it wasn't in the packet, but it should have been sitting before you. It's an email, so it may look a little different.
It's the last page of. Yeah, it's on the back.
They're double-sided.
Oh, it's on.
We like to conserve paper where we can, so we did double-side.
Okay.
Last page.
Okay.
So with that, I'll turn it over to Brenda.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Mainwaring. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for Union Pacific for the states of Iowa and Nebraska. My residence or my business address is 1400 Douglas Street, Omaha, Nebraska. I have with me tonight our local operating engineer and our manager of public projects engineering. So if we have any questions that get into that level of detail, they're more than willing to answer those questions. I want to start with a little bit of background. 3 years ago, the City of Des Moines, the City Council and the Mayor asked Union Pacific to come to a study session because they had a lot of concerns about traffic delays on the East Side Corridor. And they asked Union Pacific to address those concerns by finding a way to make vehicle traffic, flow better in that East Side Corridor. So what you're seeing tonight is a culmination of those 3 years of work. So to start off with, to give you a little bit of background, this is the East Side Rail Corridor. This is the north-south corridor for Union Pacific here. Hull Avenue, Dean Avenue. ADM is right up here. As you come down here, we make a sharp 90-degree turn into our east-west yard. This is our short line yard. We'll be talking a lot about that. This track here, that's not highlighted, is the Iowa Interstate track. That is their route into Des Moines and on into Omaha. Union Pacific and Iowa Interstate share this route. In this part of the yard, this part of that track, the track is very much at capacity. In other words, it's full of freight traffic. We have about 100 customers that ship goods into or out of Des Moines, so 100 local-based customers who ship on Union Pacific. About 12 trains a day arrive in Short Line Yard. We have an additional 5 to 10 that pass through Des Moines. So that's roughly the equivalent of about 6,000 truckloads of goods, semi-truckloads of goods, that are not traveling on Des Moines roadways. We have 170 employees in Polk County with an annual payroll of about $12 million, and we've invested about $15 million in Des Moines since 2005. There are 4 primary reasons for the traffic delays on the east side due to rail traffic. That sharp curve that I showed you limits the speed that trains can travel. It's a speed limit of 10 miles an hour. There are industries on the line, local industries, that have to be served that require stop and go service. Those 2 factors really cannot be changed in any way. The other 2 factors that we looked at are hand-thrown switches, and that picture that you see there is sort of an example so that those of you who aren't too familiar with the railroad can understand what we're talking about. The conductor has to climb off the train, manually move the switch so that the train can go in the track that it needs to go on. There are a series of those switches into the yard where we make that sharp turn. Union Pacific, as part of this plan, will invest $750,000 to install power switches that would be controlled from onboard the locomotive. The other factor is we have limited space between road crossings to allow us to put a train both in the yard and outside the yard while we're waiting for space so a train can be dispatched into the yard. There is no place for us to put a standard length train where we don't sit on a crossing. Now, the issue of yard capacity is really not due solely to the number of cars on the train or the number of cars in the yard. Equally important is the length of track that we have to accommodate those inbound and outbound trains. And the train length is really determined by the customer needs across the country. One of the reasons that the American rail system is the best in the world, the most efficient, the most economical, is we're able to adapt to the customer needs and be flexible and have the kind of train length they need and run the kind of trains that they need us to run. We build those trains to minimize cost to shippers and therefore minimize the cost to the consumers. After we kind of looked at this and determined what the issues were, we took a look at the area. These are the east side rail crossings. Again, to kind of give you more specifics, from a street side, this red line, again, is the rail traffic. Because of the way the map's oriented, I had to divide it up, but you can see it goes from Euclid, Hull, Guthrie, and then down here, University, Hubble. Easton is right there, Grand, Walnut, Dean. You can see where we cross the tracks. Southeast 34th, Southeast 36th. So I said that there are 2 things that we need in terms of adding capacity. Space within the yard and space outside the yard where we can put a train and we aren't sitting across a city street. Within the yard, the only place that we can gain any capacity is on the east end at 34th, Southeast 34th and Southeast 36th. There's no comparable option on the west end because of that curve that I showed you and because of the layout of the receiving tracks for the yard. Without those closures, we do not have space in the yard to bring in a train efficiently. Even if we put those power switches in, we don't have any place to move the train into the yard because we don't have enough space from one end to the other to park a train. So the proposal, at which Jason showed you a little bit, would be to close Southeast 34th, close Southeast 36th, install a new crossing. There actually used to be a crossing here, but reinstall it here at what would be Southeast 38th Street. And then because of the flooding issues that we heard about through the neighborhood meetings, Union Pacific would make available to the city a roadway along our right-of-way that would be used for emergencies during flooding. So during flooding incidents where they could not have access to Scott Avenue, that emergency roadway would be available. It would be built according to city standards, and those are something that we're working with the city staff on. We would also pay for the improvements at Dean Avenue to put in a improved turning lane there so that the traffic that's traveling on Dean would be able to clear that crossing a little bit better. Obviously, that's an issue that the State Fair has talked to us a lot about. I also talked about needing space outside of our yard. We don't have any place where we can put a train to hold a train while it's waiting to get dispatched into the yard without blocking a crossing. To the east side, that's Iowa Interstate. UP doesn't receive trains from that direction. On the south side, we have sufficient space. We can sit south of Maury Avenue or Maury Street and hold a train down there until we have space. We'll move slowly into the yard, again, because we're making a sharp turn, but we have space to hold it. And most of those trains that are northbound actually don't go into the yard. It's the trains that are coming in from the north where we have the biggest problem. We do not have enough space to put a train any place there that we don't block a crossing. So in order to have sufficient space to build that train, we're looking for closure of Hull Avenue. That does a couple of things. In addition to creating space for us to hold the train and combining with the power switches, improving the east side rail crossings, it also gives space for some ADM improvements that are planned. And we do have ADM here. They're going to speak in a little bit, I believe. So it creates rail capacity that ADM is going to need in order to expand in the future and that we are going to need in order to serve future business. I also mentioned Scott Street there. Essentially, until that Scott Street crossing is officially vacated, we are obligated by federal law to continue to maintain the crossing even though it's no longer accessible to traffic. So we're asking for that vacation. So you can see the Hull Avenue improvements. A lot of stuff going on here, adding some turning lanes, expanding Dixon, making it the intersection improvements there so that we can improve the flow of traffic along that route. We also will do some real-time emergency notification for first responders so they know if there's a train blocking south on Easton or any of those other roads. The city did some traffic counts here, and I think they've mentioned this before, that there will be about 3,400 road vehicles on a daily basis that would need to find an alternate route, and somewhat over 19,000 on a daily basis that would be benefited in terms of having that east side traffic move more quickly because of the improvements we're talking about making to the roadways so trains can move more efficiently. So these closures, this request, this proposal that we put forward is Union Pacific's response to the city's request to reduce those traffic delays on the east side. And clearly it's also going to improve our operations. It's not good business for us when trains aren't moving. But if we don't have sufficient rail capacity, we're forced to cause delays on public roadways. Because this proposal will bring improvement for both UP and for East Side residents, we're prepared to invest more than $2 million in the project. It also allows us to meet the needs of our current customers. We're right now being creative in how we meet those needs. But unfortunately, those operating limitations are causing frustrations for East Side residents as they get stuck behind trains and for our employees as well. As Des Moines looks to compete for future economic development, it's going to have good rail service. You have a letter from the Department of Transportation, you have a letter from the Des Moines Area Metropolitan Planning Organization explaining what Des Moines' needs are for rail service. They've done an extensive study about what kind of rail service is needed. This is the kind of improvement that will help them meet that plan. The bottom line as we see it, without these improvements, we cannot do what the city's asked us to do, which is to improve the flow of traffic on the east side. And we cannot meet the needs, continued needs of our current customers, and certainly cannot meet any new capacity needs that might come into the city. It's been several years in the making for this proposal. We work closely with city staff. We really appreciate their help. We appreciate all the effort that they went to try to get us the neighborhood input that we needed. We've made a lot of changes to the proposal as a result of those neighborhood meetings. We're requesting that the commission accept the staff recommendation for the vacation of these roadways. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
I think I have a question.
Go ahead, Will.
Could you go back to one of your maps, please? The one just that you know. Well, yeah, this one will do. I'm looking at the figure 19,000 on East Euclid. Those are traffic automobile counts? Is that correct?
That's my understanding. This is a city chart.
Well, it is though, isn't it? Is that not true?
Yes,
a traffic count?
That's it, Will.
But the red lines actually are rail lines.
Correct.
And they're red lines that are being used by the railroad, And then there are other lines that are not red, but are also being used by the railroad. You talked about the interstate line, I think. My question is this. I notice a number of the rail lines north of Euclid Avenue. I have a concern about capacity and the need in the future for the railroad to actually block East Euclid Avenue as well.
I believe Euclid is separated.
Yeah, there's an underpass.
Underpass at Euclid.
There's also, though, a line to the west of that as well.
Did we cross?
Does not,
That's ADM.
this dead end is a dead end, correct?
Yeah.
Right here, this line right here.
Union Pacific Railroad, Omaha. Right there, that line's the Ankeny industrial lead that goes out towards Ankeny, and it is presently being abandoned at this time, or is abandoned from north of 54th, north 54th Avenue.
Is it possible that that could be used in the future and reopened?
It all depends on how the rail banking or what happens to the right-of-way at that location in the city of Ankeny. We do also have the Swanwood industrial lead that goes north up there also, and that is available for industrial development up there at this time also.
I have another question. The staff report mentioned that that the fire department has determined that there might be the need to use Dixon Avenue at a time when it's blocked. And as a result, there'd be a flashing light that would warn emergency vehicles to use a different route. Is that concern warranted?
I would defer to the fire department on that. We will install that as part of the plan, but I would defer to the fire department as far as their concerns about that.
Tom Patava, Fire Marshal with the Des Moines Fire Department. When we were asked to take a look at this plan, the one concern that we had was, since we would not be able to use Delaware if we were coming from station number 3 to get to the northeast, say at Luther Park Apartments, we wanted to be able to use Dixon, but knowing that there was a train crossing at Dixon, we didn't want to turn north on Dixon and get to that crossing and find out that there was a train. So we asked for some type of a signal, some indicator at Guthrie, so that we knew that there was a train across Dixon. We would continue east on Guthrie to East 14th and then come in from that direction. They've indicated that they can do that for us, and with that, we do not have any concerns about responding to that area with that closure at all.
Thank you,
Anything
Mr.
else, Paul?
Chairman.
It's okay.
I have a couple questions. You mentioned several times that there's no space to park. Have you considered acquiring more land to park? This is a substantial impact on neighborhoods when you're just seeking parking space. That just seems kind of unusual to me.
When I say park, I'm saying hold a train while it waits to go
Right.
into a yard. So we're occupying our track,
Right.
but there are road crossings that go across our track. In order for us to occupy our track, we do not have any place where there's sufficient space between road crossings where we can hold a train while we're waiting to get into the yard, or to get into the yard and hold a train, because of the number of road crossings that exist that cross our right-of-way.
How long are these trains?
Typical length is about 7,500 feet.
And you expect it to stay at that, or?
I expect it to get longer.
And-
Rail is, I can tell you that rail is a growing industry because it's the most economical, most fuel efficient, and cleanest way of transporting freight. As we all look at ways to try to reduce our carbon footprint and reduce the amount of fuel we use, more and more industries are going to rail because it's the best choice to get freight economically where they're going, which is good for the consumer and good for the country. Rail is continuing to grow.
And my second question is about the floodplain. We've done spent a lot of taxpayer money and federal money, state money on protecting the neighborhoods and the floodplain. And now you're talking about an alternate route for floodplain. I guess I'd like one of the engineers to explain to me what has changed in that area, if anything has.
And I can dive into the staff report, or we can talk about the different issues, but let me, when we had the neighborhood meetings in July, there was the concern that was raised that at certain times, the 4 Mile Creek to the east and the 7th Ward ditch, which is just a little over here to the west, are flooded onto Scott Avenue at the same time. We reviewed that with our stormwater engineering staff. They went back through historic data for the 4 Mile. For the ditch, it's been more based on observation. Those two problems at those 2 points are independent of each other, so they don't always, when one floods, it's not always that the other one floods. But there are times when they both do, so that's where the proposal to do, how do you mitigate that? And so the concept of this emergency access road that Public Works would have the keys to and maintain came into play. So if by chance here by the softball field where it comes onto the road and then down here are flooded at the same time, then this would be able to be accessed and come down to 38th and either go Laurel Hill Road, which is part of the staff rec we can cover. This is proposed. This would need to be overlaid, and this would be a full-time crossing. This would be emergency only, but this would be a full-time crossing that would be 365, all times and paved.
Did I hear you say that the railroad is going to build it and the city's going to maintain it?
Yeah, they would, and we're kind of jumping around, which is probably fine, but if this project moves forward and the city council ultimately says, yes, this is something we want to do, we will be developing an agreement with the railroad, and that legal agreement would include the list of these improvements that would be made. They would actually pay for them. The city would be, we would be constructing them. But this, so long story short, yes, they would pay for its construction, but Public Works would, after it had been used, would need to go through it, make sure it had ample rock on it still and graded. It wouldn't be an ongoing thing because it's closed. It'd just be as needed. Does that answer your question?
Well, I don't agree that I'm jumping around because that was conflicting information that I heard.
No,
I guess my
apologize.
concern is we do have others, we have neighborhoods that don't have paved streets and we're not maintaining them. And if we jump out and say we're going to maintain some more, I'm concerned that we're stretching our limits
Sure.
with our budget, that we have such big constraints on. That's just my concern.
Yeah, and I apologize. I wasn't trying to suggest that the question was outlined. I just didn't know if the chair would prefer I kind of go through the staff rec that includes all these improvements.
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking for.
Okay. Is this yours? Thanks. Can we switch the overhead camera, please? We, as staff, have looked through this. There are things that need to be mitigated. We've developed this list that's a part of our recommendation. We only are comfortable recommending approval if these improvements are made. And so I'll go ahead and read through them, and I can show you where they are impacted on this map. One is the flashing notification that was already discussed. So that would need to be part of the construction. B is lengthening the East Euclid Avenue turning lane and installing a left turn arrow at Dixon in Euclid. So I don't know how well this shows up. Right now, this is a 200-foot long turning lane, so it would be increased to 400 feet. and an actual an arrow. Right now there's no turn arrow, will be added to help facilitate with movement. So that's one of the improvements. C is the enlargement of the Dixon Street Hull Avenue intersection to accommodate truck movements. After our initial meetings, we had our engineering staff put down a template and look at 18-wheeler movement patterns. And these are roughed out. This isn't exact science, but this is generally how that intersection would need to be improved. D is construction of turning lane and traffic light improvements at Dean and 30th. That's been mentioned. So I'll show you a graphic, kind of shows how that would work. So here's Dean Avenue, East 30th. So you can see the addition of, you got 2 lanes to the north and the turning lanes on the 4 sides. E is the construction of a permanent 38th Street crossing, which we've mentioned. It would connect Laurel Hill Road and Scott Avenue and be open at all times. And then G is the emergency access road connection. So, as I indicated, if this project were to move forward, the City Council will receive whatever your recommendation ends up being, and they'll have a decision before them to make, and that will be either to, at that point, make the decision that we're not proceeding, that they're not interested in the project. The other decision would be to direct staff to continue to work with the applicant and to iron out all the kind of contractual requirements that would ensure that all this would take place.
Jason, you also, I think, left off F, which is paving a Laurel Street Road with overlay surface.
Okay, yes, I apologize if I didn't.
No, that's fine. I just.
We were continuing to look at comments as they come in. I anticipate that we'll have a lot of comments tonight and perhaps new concerns that may be brought forward, and we're willing to continue to look at those as well. I'd happy to answer any questions you might have.
Have any questions? Mike?
Jason, can you go back to the graphic? I think it was Dixon, where you showed a line with impact on the surrounding properties at the intersection.
The turning radius?
Yeah. What staff is requesting, or the applicant is requesting, this is going to take some study to resolve these kinds of issues. How confident are we that these types of issues can be resolved, such as this property owner on the corner, I don't know who it is, but where it looks like you'd have to encroach quite a bit on their parking lot?
And then unfortunately, this doesn't have the right-of-way lines. I know, Jennifer, if you would like to kind of talk through what this would encompass.
Sure. Hi, Jennifer Bohack, City Traffic Engineer, City of Des Moines. We basically took a look at the turning radius at this intersection, and this is kind of our ultimate scenario here. We have been in discussions with property owners along Hull Avenue in this area in general about this project. We have not had specific discussions about right-of-way and right-of-way purchases. We do have more land on the west, and so it could be if we can't, and on the kind of the north, we can't get land on the southeast, maybe we can widen to the northwest. So those specifics could be worked out. That could kind of shift or slide depending on how those negotiations go with the property owners, but we haven't gotten into those specifics yet. Yep.
Thank you.
May I
Any
ask
other
Jennifer
questions?
a question,
Will?
please? May I ask you a question, Jennifer? Most of the information that I've gotten about this project has been from the Des Moines Register. And when I got the staff report, I learned that Dixon Street is going to be affected as well as Hull Avenue, as the fire department official mentioned that to us. In your discussions with property owners in this area, has that point been brought forward so that they know that Dixon Street at times might not be available for emergency vehicles?
Yeah, they do understand that a lot of the traffic is now going to have to use Dixon, and it has been explained to them how emergency vehicles would have to reroute in this area, and they have, especially those that are east of Dixon along the hall, there's been discussions of fire has been at those same meetings with those business owners that we have had as well. So it's been communicated to them. So
They are clear about that.
they do know, yeah, that track could sometimes be blocked. And the amount of activity on that track south of Dixon is a spur track that just serves a few businesses. It's not a regular mainline track. So the amount of blockages in a day is not as much as you see on the regular mainline track as how Union Pacific has explained it. So.
I understand that, but of course, with the talk about efficient space and the need for capacity and growth, one can only imagine that the use of that line will increase.
Any other questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all you have, Jason?
Yes.
Jason, I want to thank you. I want to commend you. I understand that you've done a yeoman's duty on this work, and it's been a lot of tireless hours working on this. I want to thank you, as I always do, staff for all the work that they put into this. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. What I'm going to ask for is for people to line up on this wall so we can kind of move along in an orderly process. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application, first of all, in favor of the application? Sir, please come forward, get your name and address. Are you in favor of it? Okay. I'm looking for people in favor right now. Are you in favor of it, sir?
Yes. Kathy's requested that we have people sign.
Okay. We'll also want you to sign in, but I want your name and address as well, so we'll know.
My name is James Paroli. I work for Archer Daniels Midland Company, 1935 East Euclid Avenue in Des Moines.
Go ahead, James.
On behalf of ADM's soybean crush facility in Des Moines, I'd like to offer support for the closure of the Hull Avenue crossing and the related road infrastructure improvements. ADM supported the city's civil engineering and traffic study on the project to ensure that overall impact to the community will be positive. And the traffic study has shown that more than 19,000 vehicles will be positively affected on a daily basis if the plan changes are affected due to reduced wait times at intersections in the downtown area, while 3,400 would have to be rerouted. Additionally, the study confirmed that emergency response to the area will not be affected if Hull Avenue is closed to the proposed section along the tracks. ADM places a high value on safety and the safety of our employees and the safety of our community members. We believe that closing the crossing at Hull Avenue will allow for safer, more efficient access for trucks and rail cars to the local businesses. It will help improve the road safety and reduce wait times at intersections. We recently completed significant investments at our facility to improve the flow of truck traffic into and out of the facility on the east side of Des Moines, and we feel that this closure and the associated road improvements will further improve traffic and road safety near the ADM facility. Multi-rail crossings are exponentially more dangerous than single-line crossings. Directing truck traffic to under and overpasses at Euclid and Guthrie Avenue and away from Hull Avenue crossing will prevent vehicles from going over a 5-track crossing. On Friday, December 21st at about 1800 hours, I received word from an ADM employee on duty at our Des Moines plant that there was a tractor trailer stuck on the railroad tracks at Hull Avenue. This is a worst nightmare situation, and you can picture in your mind, videos of semis and cars being hit by trains. We immediately contacted the UP manager on duty, who had also just heard of the situation moments before and was in the process of sending out a special agent. But it's several tense minutes that passed before it was reported that the truck was able to move off of and clear the tracks. This is an extremely dangerous crossing due to the number and frequency of times it's crossed by trains every day and by the number of tracks a vehicle must cross to be clear of the intersection. Because of this, we always suggest that commercial vehicles use a route which will allow them to arrive from the west on Hull Avenue when delivering or leaving from ADM. Infrastructure improvements are extremely expensive. This is an opportunity for the community and local residents to benefit from private investment through improved roads and intersections coupled with less wait times. The UP is offering several $1 million to make improvements to roads, signals, and intersections that are otherwise not required, and with the exception of the Euclid-Dixon left turn signal, will not be made if they are to be paid for by public funding. In addition, the total private investment in projects related to the success of this project and these road closures amounts to more than $20 million. A significant portion of this amount is related to the labor, design, and construction of railroad track and local improvements in industry. That means that if this project gains City Council approval and the investments are made, there's money that will be invested locally, and that revenue will stay here in the Des Moines area. For some comments on further economic impact, ADM operates a facility that was built in the 1930s, and we currently employ about 150 people in Des Moines and more than 2,000 in the state of Iowa. There are several hundred truck drivers that earn a livelihood and support their families by hauling soybeans and products into and out of the ADM plant on the northeast side of Des Moines. These soybeans are grown by more than 4,000 farmers across the state of Iowa. The reason the production from so many farms across the state are delivered to Des Moines is because of the price levels and the service that we provide. The single highest cost component in getting ag commodities from the field to food on the end user's table is cost of freight. Through improved rail and truck infrastructure, we are able to reduce these freight costs. Efficient rail access to the destination markets to which our products flow equates to a more viable business environment at the origin. That means that projects such as this not only improve traffic flow for Des Moines residents, but it adds sustainability and long-term economic impact to companies like the Union Pacific, ADM, all the businesses with whom we engage in the greater metro area, and farmers across the state. The social and economic impact of infrastructure improvements and investments is large and far-reaching, and that's why we support this project. We believe that moving forward with the closure of the Hull Avenue crossing and associated road improvements is in the long-term best interest of our local economy and of the safety of the residents of Des Moines. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Just a minute, James, before you move.
Sure.
Ted, you have a question?
Yes, James, would these improvements and these closures increase the amount of rail traffic out of the ADM plant or into the ADM plant? What does it do to the ratio of truck to rail shipment?
I would say the ratio would probably remain the same. The majority of the raw materials arrive by truck, and the majority of the outbound materials leave by rail.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Please step forward, give us your name and address.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Todd Ashby. I'm the Executive Director of the Des Moines Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. I believe you have before you a letter of support from the MPO. This project supports a lot of our goals in our long-range transportation plan, improvements to rail infrastructure, reducing impediments to rail traffic. Rail transportation is critical to the success of the transportation system in the region, as well as to the economy, so we would recommend supporting this project. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you. Is there any more to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. Line up on the wall here. We're going to ask you to sign in and then give us your name and address when you come to the podium. Step forward, ma'am. Give us your name and address.
Hello, my name is Sheree Mortiz. I'm here representing the neighborhood Keep Hall Avenue Open Campaign. I live at 2904 East 22nd Street, just a half block off Hall Avenue. I'm probably more than 250 feet from the railroad tracks, but not much further. We have been involved in a petition drive over the last 2 months and have accumulated at this point over 400 signatures Included in this count are 60 signatures from the owners and employees of small businesses in our community. These businesses are located up and down Delaware, the Delaware Business Corridor, north and south of Hall Avenue, and small businesses on Hall Avenue in the Snooseville neighborhood, as well as small businesses along the East 14th Street corridor. The general consensus among these businesses is that it will cause a loss of direct access for their customers to get to their enterprises and cause customers to find it inconvenient to continue to do business. This closure also cuts the small business owners off from quick routes to access supplies and services that they require to conduct daily business. Especially disconcerting for the businesses that I have talked to along the Delaware corridor east of the railroad tracks is the fact that they are being cut off from the Hall Avenue UPS service center on the west side of the track, which many of them use on a daily basis. I think it's important to be reminded that all our small businesses combined employ more people than the 170 people reportedly employed by the railroad, and ADM is not offering to add jobs with their expanded capacity that they would be allowed through this project. When small businesses are not properly protected and supported, it has a negative impact on the neighborhoods they reside in. As goes our small businesses, so goes our neighborhood. These people eat in our restaurants, buy gasoline, grocery shop, and buy merchandise at our retail outlets. The impact on our residential neighborhoods is equally destructive, allowing big businesses to build barricades that create unsightly, dead-end neighborhoods lowers our property values and threatens our viability and sustainability as a community. Our homes are modest in size and create an excellent opportunity for young and old with modest incomes to afford a tidy little 3-bedroom home in well-kept neighborhoods. Like many typical families, our homes are the most important asset we have. Undermining their value by this proposal threatens the future economic security of literally hundreds of families east and west of the tracks. In this city, it is unfortunate that we continue to usher in low-rent housing and are simultaneously considering a proposal to undermine a community that provides affordable single-family dwelling homes. Owning property, as we all know, creates pride and better property management as opposed to rental options. If we are serious about making Des Moines a desirable destination for families, we need to consider and to make sure that we are not doing things that require us to default to low-rent housing over and over again. What family will want to buy a house on the west side of the barricade when Garton Elementary School and Goodrell Middle School are on the east side of the barricade? What builder would ever consider this in a new development? There are serious consequences for fire and rescue services also. My father was a fireman for the city of Des Moines for over 28 years. Taking away Hall Avenue as a route leaves much to be desired in the Euclid Avenue and Guthrie Avenue alternative routes. The added route time will result in less than desirable emergency outcomes to property and people. The best scenario is for the Hubble station to take our call on the east side of the proposed barricade, but that is not always possible. When rescue services come from the East 12th Fire Station to travel east to my Garton neighborhood, Euclid Avenue is not always accessible because it floods. And stalled cars block traffic. And just as troubling is the Guthrie Avenue route, because there are 3 speed bumps, each 100 feet apart. These are designed to slow traffic down. But even more shocking is the fact, as reported to me by a firefighter in his 40s, that the speed bumps can cause their airbags to deploy in fire and rescue vehicles, even when going 10 miles per hour. Add to this equation the fact that the Guthrie overpass ices over repeatedly, and you have a formula for disaster. An important asset to our neighborhood are the Luther Park apartments and care facilities. Many of us on the east side of the tracks have elderly, vulnerable family members who live there. Many of the residents that I talk to are dismayed that the city would consider doing this to them. Furthermore, one of the most disappointing aspects of this entire issue is the fact that the railroad has offered my neighborhood nothing in exchange for taking a public right-of-way.
Cherie?
And yes.
We're going to give you another minute, okay?
Okay. We have a beautiful green space in our neighborhood. I'm sorry. This is to notify my 86-year-old aunt at Luther Park to take her meds. The other thing that is disappointing is that the city has asked nothing of the railroad. The $2 million offered to the city to widen Dixon does nothing for my neighborhood, and the city hasn't asked or expected anything from them. We have a beautiful green space. We have a small park in my neighborhood that sits empty because there's nothing there to bring our families back. The wading pool doesn't work, and there's scraggly playground equipment. Approving this proposal perpetuates the idea that those who can't be of use to market forces and big business are considered expendable. This ideological framework makes our East Side neighborhoods simply a drain on the system. The issue at hand is not the viability and profitability of ADM or Union Pacific. The city needs to protect neighborhoods from the insatiable desire by multi-million-dollar corporations to further line their pockets with obscene profit margins.
Sherry,
yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Please come forward, give me your name and address.
My name is Mike McHenry. I reside at 7113 Benton Court in Urbandale. I, along with my brothers, own the property at 1947 Hull Avenue, which is across the street from the ADM plant. We've occupied that property since 1964, and we are opposed to this for numerous reasons. In the board, or in the meetings that they held with everybody there, talking about fire and rescue, there's something that didn't come up tonight, that if there's a train blocking Dixon, there's also another rail at Hull Avenue that if there is something at Dixon and they have to proceed up to 14th to come down Hull, there's another crossing there. What if that's crossed and they don't know? You know, we've got a great concern on fire. Somebody has a heart attack, needs rescue. The design for widening Dixon and Hull is not enough for what that area produces. If you take the amount of traffic that comes in and out of there when the price of soybeans is up, there's way more traffic than that area can handle. It can't handle it now. ADM, part of their program, they added another lane into their area for trucks coming in. That area has been open, and since it's been open, we still have trucks parked on Hull Avenue waiting to get into the plant. Granted, the moving time is quicker than what it used to be, but there's still vehicles parked there. So now by blocking Hull Avenue, we are now taking what we were getting traffic from two directions and all congested into one direction. Creates a big problem for rescue as far as we're concerned. There's not one business owner in the area that is in favor of the idea. One of the suggestions we had at the time was, if you think it's such a great idea, we're in favor of taking 30 days, 60 days, block Hull Avenue off. Let's see what happens. Let's see if the idea works. If not, it's not worth going into. We don't see how this is going to produce anything for the city. If they've got a problem with parking long trains, let them park it out in the country. Why do they have to park it in the city? Let them park it out north of Ankeny until there's room to put it in their side yard. Where does it say it has to be parked down within the city? They've done that in the years past. Why not today?
Thank you. Just a minute. Any questions? Thank you. Please come forward, give us your name and address.
My name is Frank Call. I live on East 35th Court. And my concern is the same as everyone else in Laurel Hill. We keep getting promises that 30th and Dean, where it continually floods every spring, going to be fixed. Never been done. When it floods, and you've got 30th and Dean, and you've got 4 Mile where you turn off onto Williams as you're going east on Dean Avenue, and then you make the turn onto Williams, that goes down into 4 Mile, that floods. Now they are asking us to have a blacktop put in on the north side of the tracks to run from 34th down to 38th. This land was all swampland when it was built on. There is no solid base under it. And when they're talking about putting a blacktop on it, you've all seen how many places they filled in with rock and all of this, and it continues to sink. This is going to be absolutely no different, and it's going to take away our escape route during this flooding. It's going to take away our escape route during the state fair. And as the lady that spoke first said, the city nor the railroad have offered any type of compensation for our loss of property values by letting this go. And if you will bear with me one moment, this has far more reaching ramifications than just cutting off my neighborhood or cutting off her neighborhood. I want you all to know that Des Moines has been picked, and the city council is aware of it, to be a port of entry for this NAFTA highway, NAFTA railroad coming through. If you allow the railroad to come in here and spend a few dollars and give the city of Des Moines money for their coffers, next time it's going to be your neighborhood. If you're anywhere close to the tracks, they've got to come down to quote their yard. The last gentleman that spoke said, let them park their trains out in the country. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. They can put out 2 or 3 tracks out along their right of way, and they can park this stuff. There is no reason for them to basically isolate neighborhoods just for their convenience. The young lady spoke about putting in automatic switchers instead of manual switches. The question is, why haven't they done it? How do they know what's going to work? They don't, because they're sitting here wanting to have their cake, and then maybe we'll put a little frosting on top of it. That is not right, people. I did not move to my neighborhood 8 years ago and buy a home to be cut off from the rest of the world 2 times a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Hold on a second. Frank, any questions? Thank you. Please step forward, give us your name and address.
Hi, Jason Merkley, 409 Southeast 35th Street in Des Moines, which is currently a dead-end street. Just a little history there. I just moved into the area a couple years ago, but have been in that area my whole life. My grandpa lives next door to me, has been in the neighborhood 65 years. Just a little quick deal. Currently, my concerns are with the security of the neighborhood, the dead-end streets, the dumping zones that happen on dead-end streets and near the ball field, the flooding between 4 Mile Creek and the 7th Ward ditch, and the emergency roadway that would be at the 38th Street area there. And then the traffic counters that they had done around the fair time, which happened to be on either side of the tracks, that were blocked by a train 80% of the time. So the main concern with security is I have personally had to run people off of my street, which is one of the 4 dead-end streets from 30th Street to Pleasant Hill. And, you know, Christmas Eve, a guy was dumping over at the ball fields, and there's no emergency, you know, there's no police, no real security as down in that neighborhood, except for the UP service trucks that are running up and down that right of way. And my grandpa's been working with those guys for years to get keeping people from dumping on that right of way down there. And you know, with the manual switches, I don't ever see anybody getting off the train. I see them getting out of their trucks that they drive up and down the right of ways currently. You know, that's an added security for us. They have a lot of lights down there, but my concern is major safety issues and emergency personnel to be able to get down there, because majority of the people in the neighborhood I would place an estimate, probably 55, 60 years old would be about the average age there. You know, it's just a bad idea to put more dead-end streets down there. That's pretty much all I have. Thanks.
Hold on a second, Jason. Any questions? Thank you. Please step forward, give us your name and address.
My name's Don Kern. I live at 2912 Dean Avenue. And I agree with the guy. Why haven't they already put these automatic switches in if it's going to speed the train up? I've never heard nothing else said about all I've heard is what the good is going to be for the railroad. I haven't heard no good said about the people that live in the area. The railroad, I think, UP came to Des Moines in 1995. I've lived here since 1953. And I've heard the same crap since I've been here, for one thing. And is the railroad going to compensate us for the loss of our property for their gains? That's all I got to say.
Hold on a second. Any questions? Thank you. Please step forward, give us your name and address.
Cynthia Raymond, 416 Southeast 36th Street in Des Moines, and representing Laurel Hill Neighborhood Association. First of all, I have a copy of a petition with 270 plus signatures here, people who do not want this to happen.
You're asking that it be received and filed?
If you would,
Would you
please.
please give it to the secretary? Thank you.
There's been talk earlier this evening about $2 million that Union Pacific is going to assist us in road repairs and this kind of thing. And while that is a great amount of money, and I would dearly love to have it, I was looking at the figures, and when you, first of all, the Dean Avenue intersection, we were told in an earlier meeting that it would cost $500,000 to do that particular intersection. Not very long ago, there was an article in the paper saying that Iowa DOT has put a grant through that over $300,000 will go toward the updating and the fixing of that intersection. So that leaves a lot less that Union Pacific would be doing. In their little video here, their PowerPoint, it said that to install those switches would take $750,000 to install those switches. Well, there you go. There's $1 million right down the tubes and already spent. The other thing is that Union Pacific has abandoned a bridge over the river down here south of the city. And the article on that said that they had agreed to take that down at no cost to us. The cost to take that down is $1 million. There's the two. And that's without having the intersections up at Hull and Dixon and any improvements on the proposed Southeast 38th Street. And that's just one of the things. The other thing is that I belong to the Good Neighbor Task Force. Good Neighbor Task Force is a city task force that has neighborhoods represented that are either encompassed in or bordering the enterprise zones. Now, while the enterprise zone does not include the Hull Avenue area, it does include the Southeast 36th Street and the Southeast 34th Street area. Any improvements in that area, whether it's a expansion, a new building, whatever, is supposed to go toward before the Good Neighbor Task Force, and they didn't. And they didn't. And what kind of reminded me of this was that I was called to a Good Neighbor Task Force meeting not very long ago concerning an expansion of Helena Chemical out there on Vandalia. So at that time, I was reminded of the things that they are saying they're supposed to happen to make sure that any developers and any expansion, any changes are good for the neighborhood. And I'm going to just quickly read them. Number one, it says ensure that new development does not have an exceptional odor. Okay, well, we don't know that it will. Demonstrate new development or expansion will not only protect but enhance the environment. I'm not so sure about that. Maintain a safe and secure site. 2 years ago, I'm sorry, a little more than that, we spent 9 years of our life getting a park built at Laurel Hill, and well, the court Court and Dean are on the north and south boundaries of Laurel Hill Park. I live 2 blocks south of that, 3, maybe 3. But my grandchildren are not going to be able to go easily like they do now. Instead of walking 2.5 blocks, they'll have to go 1.5 miles to go. It's a half mile to get to 30th Street intersection. I live at Southeast 36th Street. It's a half mile to get to that intersection. It's another half mile just to get across the viaduct to the Dean intersection. A half mile back, not counting the little extra few, houses here and there that are going to be between that. To go to the Pleasant Hill Way, it's even further. It's even further. To get to Pleasant Hill, over, back on Dean, up over the hill, by the fairgrounds and down. I mean, we're talking quite a ways. Kids are not going to do it. There's not going to be a teenager that will walk that far or go that far when they can think, hey, I am going to cross that railroad yard. My dad said he used to do it. You read about people doing it all the time. That's not safe. It's just not. The number 4 is minimize negative traffic impacts on surrounding areas. Well, I don't think this is minimizing any traffic situation. I think that it's just making it worse. 6 is best faith efforts to hire established residents, and then 7 is to utilize local contractors, and I hope they do.
Cynthia, we're going to give you about another minute.
Okay, well, I say that 5 out of 6 is a negative, and okay, about the odor, I think this is kind of a smelly deal, but that's a personal opinion and not necessarily that of the Good Neighbor Task Force policy. It's going to ruin my neighborhood. It will cut my neighborhood in half. Families are on both sides. They're not going to have access to each other. It's going to ruin us.
Cynthia, a moment. Questions?
Cynthia?
Yes?
The files that were submitted, are these are petitions from your neighborhood association or just from the general residents?
What it is a petition that we had drawn up for the first meeting of just the neighborhood. That was in August. Sleepy Hollow hosted it for us, and so some people that were at that meeting signed it. And the petition basically reads that anyone who uses the road and is affected by it is able to sign if they wish or not. And there were some that didn't, but I'm saying that they're definitely outweighed by those that did.
Okay. Has your neighborhood association taken a formal stance on this too?
I would say we do. We are in the process right now of reorganizing, but I don't think that makes the opinions of the people in the neighborhood any less.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Please come forward and give us your name and address.
Suzette Jensen, 3127 Thompson Avenue, Des Moines. As president of Northeast Neighbors, which is a coalition of neighborhood groups on the northeast side of Des Moines, we have voted to support the neighborhoods in their efforts to keep their intersections open. Any of us who've lived on the east side for a long time know that we have issues with trains. We also have issues with rain. Anyone who's had to travel from the east side to the west side of the tracks or vice versa, if in a heavy rainstorm, you're very limited to how you can get around. University has been closed. I understand there's pumps there now, but that's very low, fills with water. Many of the streets in the Dixon Hull Avenue area flood. Euclid Avenue floods in heavy rains, and it becomes difficult. If it's the least bit icy, you do not want to go across the Guthrie overpass. It is extremely steep and very slick and scary. And the speed bumps, I go over those every Sunday when I go to church and coming home. And sometimes I try to avoid them by going a different direction. But we talk about economic development, and many times I wonder, and I'm beginning to wonder more and more, whether we're really selling out our communities and our neighborhoods to those words. There's quality of life involved here, access for businesses, access for community. I live on the east side of those railroad tracks. I go to Grandview University for many activities. My church is on the other side. I have friends at Luther Park. I have friends that live on the other side of that area. So many of us, we cross those areas a lot. I look at Laurel Hill. The Laurel Hill neighborhood worked very hard to earn money to put a park in. And I sit on the Des Moines Parks Board, and I remember when that park was put in place. They sold flowers every year. They parked cars at the fair to earn money to have a park. And now that park will not be accessible if this happens for half of their children. I think there's some questions about safety and security of these neighborhoods. Should these intersections be closed? And I think there are some questions about whether the funding that we're talking about is actually going to cover the improvements that would need to be made, or if we will be shortcutting those improvements that are needed. So I speak in favor of those neighborhoods who would like to keep these intersections open. Thank you.
Suzette, hold on a second. Any questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Please come forward, give your name and address.
Name is Marty Mock, 2701 Arthur. I would like to start by, I know a lot of people are here about this, but didn't want to speak. Those people who are against the closing of the streets that are here, could you raise your hand? Just to see, so they get an idea of how many people are here trying to protect the neighborhoods that they are living in. I'm going to approach this from a little bit different perspective than some of the other speakers because of your role as a Plan and Zoning Commission. One of the things that concerns me greatly is the lack of planning in this whole proposal. You've heard a lot about 3 different railroad crossings, but nothing's been mentioned about the other closings that may be happening at these railroads. I've asked at the beginning of this process that the city and the railroads show a complete composite picture of what's going to happen in the future with all the crossings in these areas. I've already heard from a couple of people that there's at least 2 more closings that may have to happen for them to get the closings that they really desire from this. The whole thing has been done in a very piecemeal manner. It's been done for a way to divide and conquer. We'll get these closed here now. We'll come after these a little bit later. We may have to close Easton. We don't know what we're going to do with Hubble Avenue. You've got Dean. You've got Grand. All these kinds of things we're not even talking about. As a Plan and Zoning Commission, I would hope that you guys would say, no, this is very piecemeal planning. Let's go back to the drawing board and find out what's going to take for all these railroads in the future, all these tracks, all these crossings, and say, let's look at it in a big picture. Eastsiders know that advancement has to go. They're not against advancement. But they're against the fact that they're doing it in a piecemeal manner, in a divide and conquer manner that does not make any sense from a planning perspective. Let's find out what else is going to be happening down the line. Those questions should be answered. The other thing I see is that this thing has been poorly negotiated. I don't know who did the negotiating, but to think that a couple $1 million is paying for the economic impact of the Eastsiders is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. What really needs to happen here in this long-term thing is some consideration of some viaducts to keep the city tied together in a way that allows for traffic flow. But do you hear about any kind of discussion about viaducts? No. The only requirement from federal law for the railroads is to pay for 5% of a viaduct. 5%. A viaduct running about, to be able to keep these areas about $15 to $20 million. If we really want to keep the city together as one city and not divide it into 2 cities, we need to seriously, in our long-term planning, look at what it's going to cost to do viaducts. They've been promised to people on the east side for years and years and years, and it just keeps getting pushed off and pushed off and pushed off. I believe that also we need to look at the benefits that the railroad is claiming. They're bogus. I'm going to tell you that right up front. They say they're going to have 19,000 people benefited by closing these. No, you're not. You may gain 5 or 10 minutes at some of these crossings, but when I asked them whether or not that they would guarantee, if they close these areas, whether they guarantee a 10-minute, and no more than a 10-minute blockage, they said there's no way we can guarantee that. And so even if you close these, they're not guaranteeing anything. And so you could have still at Hubble Avenue, for example, where I sat for 35 minutes the other day waiting for a train to go by. Okay, they'll close those things, so maybe we'll get 10 more minutes. And so I only have to sit at Hubbell Avenue for 25 minutes instead of 35. When you try to pin down the benefits of this process, you find out that they go up in smoke. They're elusive. We need to have better planning. And what I'm asking for this particular body is to send it back to City Council and say, no, we're not going to close these until we get better planning. We know what the impact of the city is going to be long-term, and we can start planning to be able to benefit the citizens who are most severely being handicapped as a result of this process. And finally, when we look at this and we start planning it and going, okay, is this going to be good? Are we going to be able to have economic impact? Are we going to have this? Again, we have to look at the figures that are really being promised because they are not good figures. Talked about the economic impact of ADM. I think that's a good company. I know that they want to be able to be improved. I know they want to do that. But they're not adding any more people. They're remote controlling a lot of their process. So they don't have to hire more people. There's not economic impact. That question was asked on whether or not you'll have more trucks, more trains. No, it's just going to be easier for it. And if the railroad was really serious about safety issues and doing that, they'd have been putting in those remote control things long ago to save on the wear and tear of the engineers. They have to jump off the train all the time to
Marty,
switch those.
We'll give you about 1 more minute.
Thank you. To switch those tracks. The reality is, folks, there's a lot behind the scenes that are not being brought up because they don't want it brought up. They don't want it discussed. What we need to have is the ability to say no for right now, go back to the drawing board, talk about remuneration, talk about a long-term planning, talk about what it's really going to cost the citizens of Des Moines in the long run. And I hope you'll do that. Thank you very much.
Marty.
Yes, Christine.
Marty, has Des Moines Neighbors taken a formal position on
Des
this?
Moines Neighbors is not. We allowed that for Northeast Neighbors who did take a formal position.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Tim?
Marty, I have a question for you. You talked about negotiations. How about on the neighborhood level? I believe Jason mentioned 4 meetings. Did the neighbors say, you know, this would be okay if you could do this? And was there any give and take there?
There's very little give and take with the railroad. The railroad has so much power under federal law to just about do what they want.
Did the neighbors
do neighbors know what to negotiate? That's our expectation. Is when city staff is sitting there and they're negotiating on behalf of the city, we'd expect the city to get the best deal possible. And so when we know that there has to be viaducts being built, and we know, for example, nobody's talked about Easton. A lot of money was put so Easton could go through, and now there's a possibility that could be closed down the line here. And so all that money we did and all that access from going down straight downtown on Easton Avenue onto the university is shot if that area gets closed as well. And so, yeah, I've heard people talk about it, but do a group of citizens know enough to really negotiate adequately in that area?
I guess instead of the word negotiate, did they say, okay, we're having I don't want my kids to cross the railroad track. What if we put up a walking, a overpass for pedestrians to walk over? Did they bring up any ideas that counteract what their thoughts are?
And I'm going to tell you, I went to the meetings, and no offense to the people from the railroad here, but they're not the type you know, this is what we have to have. That's their answer to everything. We have to have, there's no discussion about it. We've got to have this.
Thank you.
There's not an atmosphere of that kind of conductiveness.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Mari. Mari, has there been any street closures on that side in that area that could be reopened in the past that would help with this? I'm really concerned about dead-ending these neighborhoods because that really creates impact on neighborhoods, the value of their homes. And is there no master plan for this? I mean, this is a critical question.
There are no street closings that you could reopen that I know of. You would have to ask her.
Okay.
She might know. But no. Again, if you start looking at the little details, for example, the practicality of Hull being open. I mean, Hull is so bad at an intersection right now that it's kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy. We'll make that intersection so bad nobody wants to travel on it anyway, so we might as well close it. And you have that. I went there 3 times a day. My mother is over at Luther Park, and so I go see her. I do take the whole process every time. All 3 times I had to go around Hull because there's a train blocking it. One time, there was 30 minutes between the two. I went by it, went to Luther Park, came back by it again, same train sitting in the same spot for 30 minutes. Now, these are tracks that supposedly are supposed to be open. And yet again, it doesn't matter if those streets, if they think those streets should be open because they park their trains there anyway if they need to. It is, again, not conducive to a good, friendly neighborhood discussion.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jack?
Marty, I thought I heard at the top end of our discussion here that what gives rise to us all being here 3 years after some initial questions were complaints, the nature of which I'm hearing from you, that is, people having to sit and wait for trains at these various intersections and interrupting their day there. And now we're at the other side of this process, whatever you would like to label it, and we have a new set of complaints. I don't know as we can rid ourselves of the railroad. Short of that, what alternatives? You've talked of $15 million viaducts. I know that.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think that there are always compromises that could be made. The viaducts would be by far the best for both sides. And expectation is that when a railroad is going to force closings along in a neighborhood, and they're only going to be required to put up 5% of something that's going to benefit them, not the citizens around there, then there should be a reconsideration of a negotiating thing as maybe 5% could be up to 50% and be able to talk about that. You've had talk about the issue of again, there's no guarantee, for example, Hubble, which is the most used area there, the most used tracks. There's still no discussion about how this is going to mitigate Hubble. There's no guarantee from any of the railroad people about how much time is going to be cut off at Hubble or how long the trains are going to actually be because they got to slow down anyway. So we could get these closings and the only people being benefited are the railroad people so they can park their extra cars off to the side. But I would like to have a guarantee from the railroad that says when we have a major intersection like Hubble Avenue and you're going to give away these things over here, then Hubble Avenue should never be closed any more than 10 minutes. Because that's the issue of emergency area, emergency personnel, emergency equipment going by here. And we're talking about just Hubble because there is no viaduct at Hubble. There is no viaduct at Grand. There is no viaduct at Dean. Scott, by the way, folks, Scott's done already. Like was said, you can vote on Scott because it's already been closed. But the reality is there has to be some way by which the railroad and the city can reimburse, not reimburse monetarily, but reimburse by quality of life the citizens that are being so affected by this closing. And I don't think the city or the railroad have even scratched the surface in that kind of discussion. So I think it's really appropriate that we just say, for right now, let's leave them open. Let's go back to the drawing board and figure out what we can do long-term, full project across the board.
Thanks. I listen to everyone's concerns, and I'm always looking for solutions to the problems that the citizens present. And sometimes they come with some solutions, but I think the solution that you propose is hold your horses. Let's study this further. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please give us your name and address.
My name is Valerie Madison. I live at 2716 Sampson, west side of Delaware. And one thing I held off for a while because I wanted to see if anyone spoke on the school situation. Garden Elementary, we have a lot of individuals in our immediate neighborhood. All they do is just drive across Hull, cross Delaware, their kids are at school. Well, they're going to have a big mess, and I've got a lot of upset parents in my neighborhood. I think our brothers and sisters over in Laurel Hill mentioned a situation with schools, and all I could think was Willard Elementary that would affect their children. And this is a big deal with parents here. And at this point, too, I'd like to thank Suzette. Thank you. I'm not a religious person, but I pray when I cross Guthrie, too. The viaduct, put it in neutral and slide. And when you're thinking of parents with children in their cars. Come on, we just lost a child last night in a car because of an icy road. Okay, they're our future. Okay, and Mr. Fitzgerald, I'd kind of like to add on to Marty's question. I know at one open meeting I asked questions I feel I did not get answered. One thing I did ask, when they counted cars, it may sound silly, but I zeroed in that it was during spring break. And I told them to put me down for 15 more because I work part-time at a school and I cross Delaware. Now, what about the parents who would have been taking their kids to school during spring break? Okay, there would have been a lot more than the numbers that they had listed. And here's our petitions too, by the way. Sorry. Pardon?
You're asking that that be received and filed?
I still didn't.
You're asking for that to be received and filed?
Yes. Yes, right? Yes, okay. Anything else? You know, a little personal note. I've lived in 2 houses in Des Moines. The first house I lived in, the freeway came through. Okay, that ages me, doesn't it? The second house is a house I'm in now. I purchased that from my parents' estate. I grew up, we could either swim in the basement or ride the rapids in the backyard because of the flooding. Thank God for Neil Smith and a few others, the flooding situations have been improved immensely. I want to die in this house, okay?
Anyone else here to speak in opposition? We're going to ask that you please line up on the wall. Give us your, and you need to sign in behind you.
Okay. John Morrissey, 2913 Oxford Street. I did attend one of the public meetings that the railroad held. It was at the ADM plant. I'm very appreciative that the ADM plant made accommodations for us at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which wasn't exactly the best timing, didn't seem to me. It was very well attended. And at that time, a representative from Snyder Engineering indicated that they were going to take our feedback and do something with it. And to my knowledge, I don't know what they've done with it. At that time, I did ask that they conduct some sort of a trip study to indicate how people are crossing the road. Why are they crossing the railroad? What are the relationships between neighborhoods on one side and the other? The Union Pacific wants to posit this as a traffic matter. And it started as a traffic matter. But your jurisdiction is as planners, and it is a planning matter now, because we are impacting neighborhoods on both sides of the railroad. And it is within your purview, and it's, in fact, it's your duty, I think, to determine what the impacts are going to be when we restrict access across this right-of-way. So the fact that you might have to ask the railroad to do some additional planning work doesn't seem to me to be unreasonable. Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak in opposition to the application? In opposition? Seeing none. Brenda, do you need some time?
Thank you for your attention this evening. We understand these are tough decisions. Union Pacific is America's largest railroad. We're Iowa's largest railroad. We're Des Moines' largest railroad. We want to continue to serve Des Moines and all the things that Des Moines wants to do. Now, 150 years ago, the railroads came west from the east, and the towns followed, And Iowa and the farmers have had a terrific relationship growing up together. And what we have right now is a situation where we have grown together in a way that leads to some challenging decisions. Iowa is in a great place with a good economy. We're very lucky to have that good economy. We're lucky to have people like the Metropolitan Planning Organization looking at ways that we can make sure that Iowa continues to grow, that Des Moines continues to grow. This whole conversation started 3 years ago because the city wanted to address the issues that have come up on the east side of Des Moines, and because the city wants to continue to allow Des Moines to grow and to expand the services that it offers in rail, to expand its economy. That's why we're here today. When we started the conversation, we knew that the answers weren't going to be easy and that they were not going to be inexpensive. We committed to try to find a way to solve the problems with minimum disruption. But we know these are tough. We know that our solutions are causing heartache for people. We know that our solutions are not going to make everybody happy. But we have spent a lot of time talking about a lot of options, addressing a lot of concerns in these neighborhood meetings, changing our plans, and I think the city staff has told you that. We have made a lot of modifications to our original plan in order to address the issues that the neighbors have brought up. We know we can't make it perfect. What we're trying to do is create a situation that causes the least disruption for the most people, that addresses the issues that we were asked to address, and that allows Des Moines to continue to grow, to continue to expand the rail services that it offers. We feel like what we're offering is the best that we can offer. We are going to pay for the benefit that we see out of this. And yes, I'm not going to tell you that Union Pacific isn't going to get benefit out of this. Of course we're going to get benefit out of this. That's why we make these decisions. And we're going to pay the money to pay for those benefits that we see. That's our responsibility. It's only the right thing to do. We think that what we've brought to you is the best choice. We've really tried to lay out the options here, to lay out the benefits as we see them. There are a lot of people here who have talked about the things that are drawbacks. And yes, there are drawbacks. And yes, when the railroad and the towns grow together in the way that they have, 150 years later, it leaves us with some pretty difficult choices. I hope that what we've offered you gives you a good enough sense of what we think are the benefits that you can make a decision about the benefits and the costs of this particular plan. And it is our hope that you will find the staff recommendation to be acceptable.
Ted, do you have a question?
Yes, please. Could you address staging trains out in the country, please?
At least half of the trains that are in the Des Moines yard originate in Des Moines. We would have to leave Des Moines and bring them back here in order for us to stage trains in the country. These are trains that are produced by Des Moines businesses, by people who work in Des Moines, by people who shop in Des Moines. These are Des Moines trains. We can't take them out to the country to stage them.
Christine.
I appreciate all the time and energy you've put into this. It's a very important matter, obviously. And one of the things that's really standing out to me, there are so many neighborhood associations that have weighed in on this, and so many residents. I mean, just the comment cards that came through that we all looked at. At least for me personally, it's making a definite impact on my perception of this. But what I'd like to ask of you is if you can address Marty Mock's request, is there any other things you could do? Are viaducts a possibility? Is there any, instead of 5%, could you go up higher? What could you do to address the concerns of so many people that have weighed in and so many neighborhood associations that are concerned?
That's why we've taken so long to try to come up with this plan, because we have considered all of those things. I think Jason and Jennifer would tell you that viaducts come with their own set of challenges. Viaducts are long. Viaducts require a run up and a run down, and there's houses underneath those. Viaducts are not necessarily a good solution. So we have looked at a lot of those. The city staff has looked at a lot of those options. We have taken all those neighborhood concerns and we've run it through the experts who know these things, and we've said, you know what, this plan is the best that we can come up with. And in regard to Mr. Mock's comment about the train on Hubble, remember I told you there were 4 things that are reasons why you get stopped by a train. One is that corner, one is trains that serve local business. That train that he was stopped by today, and I confirmed it with our operating manager sitting right next to me, was a bean train that was serving ADM. ADM gets bean trains. ADM produces trains. That's the business of ADM. That's the business of the railroad to serve them.
Jack?
At the risk of unduly prolonging this, I'm going to. Well, at least 2 of us here are lawyers and we're always trying to breed compromise, and I know that's probably what you've been trying to do for the last 3 years. I've listened to a dozen citizens representing a number of other citizens raise questions which I cataloged as 9 general issues. You're more than familiar with all of them, I'm sure, from emergency response to school access to all these isolation to safety, everything. We've seen 50 or 60 cards go by here that you probably also have seen or addressed. But one thing that caught me was that you said we discussed a lot of options in getting to where we are. I'm the guy that's looking for the options to try and find some middle ground, and I know on the one hand railroads aren't going to go anywhere, and I know they're the lifeblood of many of our industries here and of our state. I get that. I agree with that. I know viaducts at 3 or 4 intersections probably are not financially feasible and are probably going to displace a lot of property owners. I understand that. I think I hear that we can't dig holes, underpasses, because of the flooding situation and the water table in the vicinity. So now the railroads aren't going to go away. Big picture, I understand that. They're going to be here for a long time. We're going to have more of it. That's all good. We can't build viaducts and we can't go under. Is that why we are where we are? Have I covered the options, so to speak?
I would defer to staff to go into the options, because we assume that you don't really care about our opinion about what's the best way to deal with your streets. That's not our job. That's not our business. Our business is to say, here's what we think we need to do, and then talk to the staff about what's the best way to get this done for the city of Des Moines and for the neighborhoods. And the staff, as Mr. Flaherty pointed out, has been tremendous, has put a lot of time and effort and work in this, given us a lot of good advice about let's go to the neighborhoods first. Let's not just throw a plan out there without having discussed it with the neighborhood. Let's find out what the issues really are. We did. We had a completely different plan for Southeast 34th and Southeast 36th. We thought we knew what they wanted. That wasn't what they wanted. We completely revised that plan. So I am not going to tell you, you know, we had this option and that option, and we weighed it and we gave it away. The fact is, we went to the city and said we need to try to improve traffic, and we need to figure out a way to continue to serve Des Moines. Because if we can't figure out a way to serve Des Moines is economically limited. And that's, I don't know, yes, we like to think of it, instead of you being stuck with the railroads, that you're blessed with the railroad. Because the railroad brings a lot of economic development, but not if we can't add capacity. So all those options that we talked about, the city reviewed, because it's their expertise, not ours. And I also want to say, yes, we are putting what for us is a considerable investment into this project. Yes, we are getting benefit. I want to be clear. We would not have undertaken this project. We would not be here discussing it with you right now if we had not been called before the City Council 3 years ago to try to solve the problem. We are here because the city asked us to.
Brent, I want to ask you a question before we turn you over to Mike a second. Have we looked at the prospect of alternative staging areas You know, if you look over on Dixon and you go up towards Aurora, Ford Motor Corporation used to have a plant over there. And I know they had rail lines in there because obviously that's how they ship most of their product. Have we looked at any of those alternatives?
I think I've done you a disservice by staying staging area, and I try to not get into railroad lingo too much. The trains that we are saying we need some place to put, those are trains that are on that line. They're on that line because they're either coming into Des Moines to offload for Des Moines customers, or because they've been built here in Des Moines from Des Moines customers who need their shipments to go outside of here. If we were to try to move those onto an industrial line, we would be going through, industrial lines by their nature are not high-speed lines. We'd be going through curves, we'd be going through, in often cases, a lot more traffic, a lot more neighborhoods. Operationally, we're not looking for some place to store a car, and if I said that and misled you, I apologize for that. What we're looking for is some place for all of that traffic that we've got coming in to serve the city of Des Moines or going out of Des Moines. We need some place to put it. We need some place to put it so that we can continue to serve those customers. And as the streets and the railroad is lined up right now, we can't do it. We can't do it without blocking a street.
I guess what I'm saying is, if you put them over off of, I'm trying to think of the street, off of Dixon is probably the closest street I can think of. Past Euclid, which would be north of Euclid, you got a large area there that,
Up towards Broadway.
right,
Okay. There is 7,400 feet between Hull and Broadway. At Broadway, our line goes off to the north. Trains that are coming from the south, headed north, have to be able to make that line. If we hold them north of Hull, standard length is about 7,500 feet, and again, remember that's over nationwide. If we hold them north of Hull, we block the line to the north. Trains that are northbound, which will be going through, are now stopped on Maury, they're stopped on Hull, they're stopped on Dean. They can't get through. We can't get past the train that's held north of Hull.
Mike, did you have some? CJ Jessen.
I just have a question for you. You've mentioned that you started talking to the neighborhoods at staff's recommendation, and I commend staff for that, and I commend you for taking their advice. But I think what I'm hearing here is you're spending $2 million, which to me is chunk change. I mean, when I'm looking at this big picture, I mean, a little neighborhood project costs us more than that. And have you given any consideration to doing some enhancements in these neighborhoods if you could come to some agreement? I mean, for the railroad to say, we're going to spend $2 million to all of these neighbors who are taking a decrease in value, giving up some security in their neighborhoods, can you come to some agreement with them and help them out? It seems to me like that there's a compromise here somewhere because we do need the railroads. The rivers are drying up, so you're probably going to get more business.
I understand your perspective. We go through 7,500 communities. We operate in 23 states. $2 million is a very large project. $2 million is a very large investment. What we believe, we have gone to the city to try to make sure that our investment is being spent in the right place, that they are helping us determine from the city's perspective with neighborhood input where that investment is best spent to offset the inconveniences that we're bringing into place. We have only the city to rely on for that. We believe they've given us good advice. The negotiations that we've had with the city, I think, have been fair, and I believe that what we're offering you is a fair package.
Any other questions? Mike, you have something?
Yeah, just one quick question. There's this $2 million number that's been thrown out, and I just wanted to clarify what exactly is included in those $2 million improvements. There was a question about the bridge downtown.
There is $1 million for roadway improvement. We essentially, we started off with an idea of what those roadway improvements were, and it was going to cost about $1 million. Okay, we can do that. And then we decided, after in neighborhood input, those weren't the right improvements. So the city went back and we said, okay, we're still in for $1 million, you figure out where you need to spend it. So there's $1 million for roadway improvements. The other $1 million, and we've said this consistently, it has not necessarily been reported consistently, so I apologize if there's confusion. There's $1 million in roadway improvements, about 1.1 million to be specific, and then there is an additional 1 million in improvements to rail infrastructure that are specifically being implemented for the benefit of the community. Yes, we will also get benefit from them. That's why we're paying for them. But we would not implement these improvements if it were not for the projects that we're undertaking to benefit the community.
In the bridge?
The bridge is essentially already removed. That was a gesture of good faith. You all know that the Corps came to you with a new flooding plan, and they said you have some problems. And one of the problems, one of the constraints down there is that abandoned bridge. We'd been working with the city of Des Moines for probably 10 years on whether or not that bridge was going to be an appropriate bike trail. At one point, it was listed in the master plan as a bike trail. We were working with them to determine when's the right time, how you're going to take, all these things that we needed to answer. And then when it came about that the Corps said that's an impediment, the city has very few options for how to improve its flooding, we said, okay, we'll take it out. We're just going to take it out. You know, it's part of this package. It's a package that we're doing in the city of Des Moines, but we can't wait. Flood season's coming up. You can't wait. We took it out.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I could, just really quick, I tried to keep as best of notes going through this, and Jason, I know you did too. First of all, I just wanted to stress that a lot of good comments tonight. That was the purpose of the neighborhood meetings, was to get comments, as well as for the Planning Commission to have a public hearing. All of the comments from tonight get forwarded in meeting summary minutes to the council for any consideration of further action. The commission is making a recommendation, or asked to make a recommendation this evening, so this is not by any means the final action on this request. Very quickly, I tried to kind of hit some highlighted concerns that I heard. This is not to at the detriment of any other comments, but they were just ones that I thought maybe staff might be able to ask. There was a question about trains blocking Dixon and there being multiple crossings that might be impacted by a train being blocked. And I'd heard that there was a signal that was going to be on Guthrie, I believe, that was going to alert the emergency responders if there was any blockage on Dixon. I'd assume that would cover any crossings that are blocked on Dixon, or is that just one crossing that's being... So, Jason, could you point out on that area where the crossings are that might be...
I believe the crossing on Dixon that has been raised as a concern by the fire department is down here. I think that perhaps the gentleman that spoke maybe also was talking about maybe the crossing on, I don't know if he mentioned Hull. There's a crossing here on Hull. I don't know if he's kind of talking about how there's multiple points within the neighborhood, but this is the one that was identified by the fire department as a concern.
Okay.
Could you put it in focus, Jason? It's kind of fuzzy.
Let me see if I have a better photo. Part of the problem is the picture quality, not just our document camera.
And Jason,
actually, I haven't. Oh, could you switch the computer? I'm sorry. So here's Dixon, Hall, the crossing.
okay. There was also, I think, one of the commissioners had raised a question about right-of-way acquisition, and I guess that hasn't been finally determined at this point. It would be subject to further analysis and negotiation with individual property owners for those. I also had a note here that a concern about the soils, I think, around the railroad right-of-way along between East 30th and East 38th and the roadway sub-base. I assume that would be looked at as part of the roadway construction design. It would have to meet our, I think in your presentation, it would have to meet our city standards for a roadway, so that would include the sub-base, and if it was insufficient, they'd have to amend that that soil where the road would be to provide adequate subbase. Is that
Yeah, and
accurate?
I just want to emphasize that through this process, we've been working with the design section of our engineering department, and they've been providing feedback about feasibility and placement of that emergency road or construction of the 38th Street crossing. So we have gone to the level of detail that's beyond just drawing a line on the map and assuming that it can be done. We've made sure that we've worked with engineering to evaluate those proposals.
I'd asked, I think UP provided some clarification on what the $2 million covers and doesn't cover. That was a question that kind of came up. My understanding is that's what their proposal is. I don't know if that's, obviously the council would have to decide if that's sufficient. But at least there was a question about whether it was including this bridge removal. And I think it was clarified it does not. That's above and beyond this bridge removal. There was a question about, I apologize here. Access to the parks in the neighborhood, was that brought up at the neighborhood meetings, and how has that been looked at?
Yeah, within this area, there has been, a lot of discussion about access north and south and to the park that's to the north. And that's just one of those things that it's really hard to sort through. There's, as you know, this project and the impacts and the different things that we've tried to sort through, there's been a long list, and we had the big notepads at the early meetings, and we wrote everything down and made notes and tried to boil it down to kind of this, like Jack, to those major points. And that was one that we were able to come back and provide or propose that 38th Street crossing, which it's not as direct as 34th and 36th, but it does provide another means of north-south egress besides 30th. And so those were the ways we were trying to, not only is that for neighborhood circulation, but also concerns that were raised about fair time traffic and people coming from the east into the neighborhood to the fairgrounds. So that kind of helps address multiple issues.
Okay. Jason, there's a question about, and maybe Jennifer can clarify this, about when the traffic counts were done on this.
She can't, the timing is different than what was mentioned.
Thank you. This question came up at one of our last meetings, and spring break 2011 was March 14th through 18th. Our counts for the whole Avenue study were taken both the week of March 7th through 11th and the week of March 24th through 30th, so the week before and the week after. So they were not taken during spring break.
Was that spring break for the Des Moines Community School District, or was that spring break for Grandview University, or was that spring break for all of them?
That was spring break for Des Moines Public Schools. That was the specific that it was being related to.
And Jennifer, was there anything done in the summertime also? Was there a question about state fair traffic or anything like that in those counts?
Counts were taken both during the fair and not during the fair in the area down by Southeast 34th and 36th to show that difference.
Okay.
And those showed up on this map here. You can see parentheses, those are the figures that are fair time, where the other figures are the typical.
Okay. And then finally, there was a question, well, I won't say finally, there was a question about the meeting that was held at the ADM plant, and they were told that their feedback would be analyzed. And I guess there were a few things that I thought were in the report that was information directly from those meetings or a response to those meetings. One was about school impacts. I think there was a follow-up done with the school district to ask them for their input on the impact on the schools. Also, traffic counts, I think, were mentioned, and then the emergency impacts. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but was the traffic signal or this emergency signal on Dixon, was that a result of that, what you heard at that meeting at ADM and follow-up?
Yes, that is correct. We worked extensively with the fire department to see what their needs would be in order to maintain good emergency response in this area. As far as the schools, we did contact the transportation director for the district to find out if a closure at Hall would be problematic for them for the busing and other things that they do, and they had said that that would not be problematic for them if Hall were to be closed at this point. And then as far as questions about traffic volumes, we reconfirmed with the consultant that had performed the study in Hull Avenue that ADM had actually hired that consultant to perform that study as part of the analysis for this proposal. And that consultant confirmed that they actually did what we call license plate surveys, where they stood basically on Dixon and Delaware, and they actually wrote the license plate of the car that drove by to find out, well, how many people are just coming to this kind of industrial park and how many people are using this as a through. You know, you're seeing roughly about 2,800 vehicles a day using that street. They found about 10%, about 280 vehicles a day are through trips. And that's kind of what they found from just a review of the actual license plate. So that when there's discussion about origin destination, that is a very clear way to determine how many vehicles are using that road as a through street.
Okay. And then finally, I guess, maybe, I don't know if any clarifications needed from our legal department, but as far as there was a request about remuneration to private property owners for impacts and that's really not the Planning Commission's purview in a right-of-way vacation request. And I don't know that really is specifically considered. The private remuneration, I guess, is really more tied to the public improvements, where we're asking for those public improvements, so like the right-of-way acquisition for some of those turning movements, and that would be a private negotiation that would occur. I know CJ, you'd asked about maybe some improvements to parks and that. I would argue that that's something or for neighborhoods.
They had discussed it with the neighborhood. I didn't say that was our jurisdiction.
Right.
I just asked if it was a discussion that was carried on with the
Right.
neighborhood.
And I think that that's something that clearly the council can look at as to whether or not that's something that's part of their consideration or part of their decision making. I mean, ultimately, the council has to decide whether or not this is an acceptable deal in their minds or not. So I think that was a majority of the comments. The final thing was just a request that it be sent back to the council for further review. I mean, I think that's ultimately what the commission is doing tonight. You've held a hearing. The comments have been made. That'll be provided in the record to the council. And ultimately, the commission can make a recommendation with whatever conditions you want this evening. If it's to refer it back and you think there should be more study, that can be made. But I do believe the recommendation does need to be made back to the council so the council can direct what they want worked on next on this. We've tried to get it to at least a point where there could be a public hearing on it and some sort of recommendation made. You have the staff recommendation. If you think that's insufficient, feel free to add whatever conditions you think are appropriate. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
I just want to ask one more question of Brenda.
Staff.
Did that northern line that was going up to Ankeny, the comment was made, has that been looked into? And this is probably repeating, you've already said you've looked into everything, but I just want to clarify. Somebody mentioned that line is being abandoned. Is there any reason for that, and why isn't that being looked at?
The line that goes to Ankeny essentially serves John Deere. John Deere in Ankeny has determined they no longer need rail service. That is essentially a dead-end line. It doesn't do us any good for the traffic that's originating and terminating in Des Moines. There's no value to that line from an operating standpoint to have any use for us in the operating issues we're trying to address here.
Thank you.
Close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Move staff.
You going to move staff, Ted? Okay. Discussion.
Sure.
Greg? I think we'll work this way.
I appreciate Ted's motion. And I think on locations B, C, and D, which is Scott, Southeast 34th, Southeast 36th, and the new Southeast 38th crossing, that probably solves those three items more or less. To me, I think the biggest question is Hull Avenue, and I think it needs more consideration. And so, I don't know, what I would like to see is that we say that B, C, and D seem okay or not, but Hall needs help. So I guess I would have to back up a little bit on Ted's motion.
Well, I think what we're going to do is this. We're going to break them out because I think council's going to want to know what our feelings are with respect to each of those A, B, C, and D. So we'll break it down that way. And I think your suggestion's perfectly appropriate.
So are we going to leave it with Ted's motion for the whole thing, or?
We'll leave it
We're
with
gonna have
Ted's
a
motion, but we'll break
for
it out to
each
A, B, C, and D. Mike? Anything? CJ?
No, I just would like to see more study and a master plan. If there's more of these closings coming down the road, I would like to see the city have a master plan. And also, maybe it would be appropriate to have a viaduct, or in other cities that I visited, they call them flyovers, and to have a price actually put on that and how much it would cost for one of these. I mean, if the city's looking to conserve its neighborhoods, this is definitely a very serious issue we have here.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to echo what CJ has said. We are a planning body after all, and I think the city staff has done a remarkable job in terms of responding to, I assume, a council directive to provide planning for this possible project. On the other hand, the railroads all across the nation are increasing in their size and in their volume, and this is a given. And as a result, there is a whole new discipline in terms of railroad planning. And it seems to me, with a progressive city like the city of Des Moines, we want to address these problems in a holistic and in a comprehensive way rather than in a piecemeal way, which it seems to me we're doing exactly now. If we say yes to B, if we say yes to C, if we say yes to D, it comes as hardly any surprise that sometime down the road we're going to be saying something or other to A. If we're going to do something in a comprehensive way, we do need to do it in a comprehensive way. And and my thought is, to reiterate what CJ said, that $2 million for a project like this that the Railroad Corporation has offered is a paltry number. I know that the railroads are too big to fail, and we've been hearing about the needed capacity. Big corporations have a voracious capacity, and it only makes sense, common sense, that it will increase over a period of time. All the more reason for a comprehensive plan that's been prepared by a national organization that does this all the time and does it in a professional way, that does it in a comprehensive way, and a way we can all feel proud.
I'm going to start back with Jack again. We'll work our way eventually this way.
Well, I'm looking at what our charge is here. The requested action is vacation of 4 segments. It's presented as 4 segments. I don't know as we can do it piecemeal. We either have to have the guts to affirm the city staff, or we say no. And we're providing advice, as I understand at this point in time, to the city council by our vote in this role. City council ultimately is going to make a decision considering our advice or not. I'm not so sure breaking out A, B, C, and D, Greg, all due respect, accomplishes much. I think we have to vote staff up or down, and we can put caveats on there on why we vote down. I think one has already been made. A, Hall Avenue is unsatisfactory to some of our commissioners. So, sort of back to the book, Mr. Chair. Requested action of our body, vacation of 4 segments of street right-of-way where the railroad right-of-way intersects. That's all we're supposed to do.
So your recommendation is that we take up all 4 in one motion?
As moved by Ted.
Okay. Joanne?
And it may not make it because of the exquisite position of A versus B, C, and D.
Joanne?
My family has been in the railroad business, shall we say. My father worked on it, his father worked on it since the turn of the last century. And I've watched what the railroads have done. They shot themselves in the foot when gas was cheap and went with trucks. Now they're finding, oi, the gas is expensive and we need to get back to the railroads. And I am very, very pleased that they're beginning to wake up. But in doing that this way, they ended up with a situation like we have where the yard is. The houses, the original houses, were all built around where these people worked. So now they have no place to expand. That yard is cramped. They've got a little bit of space, I think it's kind of south of there, where they might put another track. But there is no line, there's no place for side tracks, there's no place for anything. So we're going to have to do what we can do to get it, and maybe they can buy land as it comes available. Heck, I don't know. But it's really, really a kind of a quagmire that we've gotten ourselves into, or I should say that the city is dealing with because of how the neighborhoods grew up around the railroads. I just don't like the idea of closing Hall Avenue. The rest of it I don't have a problem with at all. It's just odd to watch this happen, because I remember the dinner table discussions my dad used to have, tearing his hair out because of what was happening to the railroads. So now they're trying to backtrack, trying to get a more feasible work environment for what we really in this country need terribly, and that's our railroads. So I'm thinking, I'm agreeing with Jack. We need to tell them yes, or we need to tell them no. Because there's just no way we're going to have a comprehensive anything when you don't have anywhere to go. We're going to have to nitpick and pick away what we can when we can do it. So that's my thought.
I just want to, I appreciate all the time and the definitely expertise that has gone into even coming up with the recommendation tonight, and the fact that this has been, sounds like a 3-year issue. But on the other hand, I do think that it certainly speaks to the concern, and with 200 and some people responding either via mail or attending the meeting, that concerns should be addressed. And, if we are the messenger for the city council, then I think we should use that role as such.
I would echo that. And I also want to thank staff for the tremendous amount of time and everyone that's put in on this. But I think I mentioned this before. I just cannot ignore the sheer numbers of residents and the neighborhood associations that weighed in on this, and I don't think we can ignore that. I would also say, Jack, I support what your position is as well. I appreciate you bringing us, helping us refocus and focus on our task at hand, and I would support that.
I thank everyone for their work also, and I appreciate what Jack said. I think we need to up or down all of it, and based on what it's going to do to these neighborhoods, I can't support it. And I also have a question for Mike as far as which city council person represents this area. So, I mean, they appoint the people on this.
Well, there's multiple.
Okay, probably multiple.
Because you have your at-large
But
council
how many
members
people on this commission represent that area? Okay.
So the commission appointments aren't based on ward district, your city representatives on the commission. So
Okay.
the appointments are made by council.
I'm curious
reps,
if
but-
they have full representation. I know we have a few vacancies. I guess that's my point is, do they have full representation here tonight?
I believe that the final 2 vacancies have been filled by Councilmember Coleman, so.
Okay.
That's at large.
So that's all my comment.
Will, did you need more time?
I just mentioned that Iowa Lutheran Hospital was founded in 1910 because there was an emergency on the east side, and the emergency couldn't reach the hospital because it was on the west side. So we've been living in these situations for a long time, and we ask for your support.
Shirley?
I really don't have any additional comments at this time.
Okay.
I'd be
Tim?
dittoing everybody else.
I would just like to add, this was brought up 3 years ago, and Mike, you probably remember, what prompted the city to approach the railroad about this whole issue?
Well, I don't have a perfect memory, but I do remember sitting at a council meeting where there were some concerns about a blockage on Hubble Avenue / Grand Avenue, a fairly long blockage that occurred, length of time, and that was what drew quite a bit of discussion with the railroad, at least initiated it.
Thank you. Just one other thing is, I would hope if either they proceed with this or it's voted differently tonight, that all these entities that came before us with concerns that had several people behind them would somehow form a coalition to work with the railroad and perhaps solve some differences and come up with compromise. I know it's easier said than done, but that's something that I would support is them going to the table again and being a little more comprehensive with what can be done and what can't be done. So thanks.
Ted?
I think I have a little bit different take than several folks, and I'm not going to thank staff for the work that they did because they get paid for the work that they do by the people in the city that are in these neighborhood associations and when the pay taxes. And when Marty Mock brings up the fact that the city is in place to negotiate for the neighborhoods, he's absolutely right. Now, whether or not you think the city negotiated correctly for the neighborhoods and for the citizens of the city is certainly up for debate and always is, no matter what. But the term economic development, I think, is used very much too often and is probably kind of a throwaway now when we say it's for the good of economic development. I happen to be a huge believer in economic development, and I think about things like passenger rail from Chicago, and I think about things like carbon footprints and how many trucks that rail cars displace. And in my I used to work on Hull Avenue at a place that didn't get as many rail cars as they would have liked to have had because of limitations in the trackage and what have you. And so therefore trucks were needed instead, and they cost more even when gas was a lot cheaper. This country wants railroads more so than they want trucks. And I'm not going to solve the entire country's problems with a couple of street closures in Des Moines, but I think to say that we haven't planned for this, I think is inaccurate. To say that the city hasn't considered a lot of the issues around this is inaccurate. And I think that this is a particularly tough thing, but I just can't for the life of me think of what you would do instead. I think of that company that I used to work at on Hull and how several companies like it over the last 25, 30 years have moved out of cities and moved out of industrial parks that have lost their rail service. And when that happens, and you're forced to find a location that has rail service, then you're talking about picking up big companies and moving them. And I don't think from an economic development standpoint or economic preservation standpoint that we're putting our city in a good spot if we're going to limit the ability of the railroad to get cars in and out. So I know it's difficult, but it's something I'm going to support, I think, because of the big picture for economic development and several other reasons.
Ted, I'm going to ask you, you've heard what Jack had to say. You're going to want to do this all four abandonments at the same time?
I'm comfortable with that, but if there's, if somebody wants to propose some friendly amendments to the motion, I'd be happy to listen to them.
Okay. Greg, did you have something?
Can I have a last word since Jack beat me up? I was only wanting it separated because we are here to help the city council come up with an answer. I agree with the lawyerly comment that we need to look at it all as one. And with that said, since Jack beat me up, I'm going to change my view and I'm going to vote for this because we need to send it on. I agree with Ted. Hull needs work, but they can work through it all. We're going to get it back because they're going to listen to this. But because Jack put the onus on me, I'm going to change my mind.
Well, I supported you, Greg. I don't get any brownie points for that.
That's fine.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion on the floor?
Repeat the motion.
All right, we're moving staff, which is recommending that A, B, C, and D be vacated. Pretty much it? Okay.
What about
I don't understand where but it talks about, oh, I see what you're looking at. Okay.
That's part of the staff recommendation.
Number one is just reservation of any necessary easements for utilities.
A, B, C, and D is the item numbers, not the conditions.
I'm looking on our agenda as opposed to staff recommendations.
It's approval of all four segments, subject to all of these conditions.
All the
that are
conditions,
listed on the
right,
staff recommendation.
right, I'm sorry. Any questions? Okay. Joanne?
Can I put that we would like to have extra work done on Hall Avenue, and extra considerations on Hall Avenue? Would that make?
I'm sorry?
Would it, can I ask if we could have extra consideration for Hall Avenue?
I think she's proposing a friendly amendment.
That's exactly what it is. Well, I'm looking at Ted.
Yeah.
Extra consideration for Hull Avenue. More study on Hull Avenue.
More study because I would rather not see it closed. That's my only problem with this whole thing is closing Hull Avenue. So if we could word it somehow that we could take an extra look at that rather than.
You would add it. Can I make a suggestion?
We could add it.
May I make a suggestion?
Go ahead, Shirley.
I hear what Joanne is saying, and I understand what Ted's motion is and what everyone else is saying, but all of the information that has been shared here this evening is going to be documented. It's going to be forwarded to the City Council. They are going to hear loud and clear that Hull Avenue is part of what everyone once looked at a little closer. So I think we're just kind of repeating ourselves when we break it down like that. That's just my opinion.
So that having been said, anything else? All those in favor of staff's recommendation, please signify by raising your right hand. 1, 2, 3. Ted, Shirley, Jack, Greg. Is that it? Got it?
Greg, Jack, Joanne,
Shirley and Ted.
Opposed, same sign. Got them all? Motion fails.
Are there any counter motions that want to be made?
Any other additional motions to be made? Mike?
I'd just like to make a comment since I didn't comment earlier. I do believe and I do hope that we're going to help find a way to make the railroad successful. I just don't believe that we've explored all of the options. So.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on to item number 4.
Just going to clear out.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to take a 5-minute recess and give them a chance to clear out, and we'll get back on.
I knew taking a 5-minute break, and then I'll be giving the staff presentation.
Where have you been? New look, you found your style. Make you realize if you open your eyes, you can change your views. Walk the city block in these shoes. Gray sky turn blue. Change your view. Well, I can change your view. And I walk the city block in these shoes. Something old for something new. Change your view. Haven't seen you around in a while. Where have you been? You look, you found your style. Make you realize if you open your eyes, you can change your views. Walk the city block in these shoes. Gray sky turn blue. Change your view. Well, I can change your view. And I walk the city block in these shoes. Something old for something new. Change your view. Change your view. Walk the city block in these shoes. Gray sky turn blue. Change your view. Well, I can change your view. And I walk the city block in these shoes. Here we are again. Haven't seen you around in a while. Where have you been? New look, you found your style. Make you realize if you open your eyes, you can change your view. Walk the city block in these shoes. Something old for something new. Change your view. Heard you moved out west. Rumors, gossip, and tabloid papers said it was for the best. I found out they were wrong a little later. Follow the sun on the rise. If you open your eyes, you can change your view. Walk the city block in these shoes. Something old for something new. Change your view.
School's in session.
Kent Lays.
Please.
Please. Hey, Brian, Lays or Lees?
Please.
Lees? Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and item number 4, request from Kent Lees to rezone property located at 2425 Euclid Avenue. Jason, you presenting on this one?
Yes, Chair. Members of the
sir.
Commission, Jason Van Essen with the city's planning staff. We do have one card that's being passed around, and then we have a letter from the Lower Beaver Neighborhood Association as well. There's the response map. The property is near the Douglas MLK intersection. Okay, so you have the letter. Excellent. Sets back, was originally constructed as a lumberyard. The applicant is seeking rezoning to M1 to allow it to be used for construction business. I'll show you a couple photographs and I'll get into the staff report. So this is the intersection. This is the property in front of it. You can start to see the property back to the north. Kind of the southern perimeter of the property, and then looking back down MLK towards the south. Just a couple other things to hit on. As you can see from the aerial, there's a mix of buildings. There's office space, there's indoor storage, there's outdoor storage that would be part of the proposal. When we look at these rezonings, the first thing obviously we do when somebody comes in is, we compare it to the 2020 community character plan and compare it to the designations on the future land use map, and then also the goals within the plan and from the tax component. And in doing so and looking at this proposal, we are recommending denial. We don't feel that it's the appropriate location to amend the land use plan to general industrial, and then also for light industrial zoning or M1 zoning. There is residential development in the area that you can see on the map. It is, this area is, is kind of what you typically think of for highway-oriented commercial kind of development, C2. So I know that we've talked about this types of situations in the past, over the past few months, with some different proposals. This might be something where use variance and going down that process after a rezoning could be a potential. So anyway, in a nutshell, that's the staff recommendation of what we're recommending now. Happy to answer any questions from applicants.
Any questions? Okay. Could the applicant please come forward, give us your name and address?
Kent Lease, 4026 Beaver Avenue, Des Moines. What we've done, we bought this property a couple of years ago. It had been abandoned for about 3 years prior to that. We have a rental property business. It's mostly single-family homes. We are operating with storage out of that facility, and we'd like to, we've put some rental areas in that. We've used the existing buildings. That site plan is the site plan. We're not planning on moving any buildings, changing any of that direct view and look from the street. What we have done over the last 2 years is on a beautification side, we've covered what we've been asked to cover. We met with the Lower Beaver Neighborhood Association. We had them tour the main building and the entire grounds facility to make sure we were on track with being part of that neighborhood. My wife is here tonight. She has an extremely bad cold today. I've never seen her have that bad of a cold, and our daughter's leaving for Texas permanently tomorrow. So we are a family-based small business, and we really work hard to fit in and be part of what needs to happen here. And what we have out there, we're not dirty, we're not noisy. There's less traffic than there. I'm sure there's less traffic with what we're doing, with a little bit of things that we're doing, than there was with the retail lumber company or lumber business there. So we've improved visually. The Park and Rec department has never complained about when we mow along between our building and the bike path that is not our property, but we help maintain that and make sure we look at that visually along ML King. That whole long building stretch that he showed you earlier, we are quite busy erasing graffiti and picking up. I've learned all about beer and wine and liquor. I've seen plenty of things I've never seen before, and it's a constant battle to pick that up, but we do work hard to pick that up. So we've tried to do what we think we can do to, again, fit in visually with that and not create, again, something that's dirty, something that's noisy and problematic to the neighborhood. So we have added extra white steel, which complements what is there, to fill in some gate areas and some areas. So there's, again, to add to the attraction of that, or don't bring in extra detraction for that facility. So with the M1, We can have our general warehousing and our construction storage. We would like the ability to store materials and equipment outside as it has been in the past. But you know, if I have a machine, a dump truck, something like that, you know, I'd like to be able to again operate out of there.
Is that all?
That's it.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just want to mention we've had the fire department through. We've been fully inspected. All of that.
Any questions? Thank you. I'm going to open the public meeting. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? In favor of the application, please come forward. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. Brian, you need to give us your name and address.
I got it down. Mr. Chairman, distinguished board members, my name is, come on, Dan. My name is Brian Millard. I live at 3920 Leonard Drive. I'm here as the president of the Lower Beaver Neighborhood Association, and I'll also be speaking as an individual at one point. I believe you've all seen the letter that's went around. Okay. You know, I'm really torn. First, I'm going to tell you that that the board did vote against the rezoning. And the letter's pretty specific about why, but we met with the applicant, went around. I did a lot of homework on the applicant, and I'll speak to that in a minute. And we understand what he wants to do and everything else and stuff. But as we all know, M1 goes with the land, not the individual. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Ken. This guy's first class. I wish he had something to do with the apartments in our area. He wouldn't find what he's finding out there and stuff. Even one of our board members has a rental unit that Ken manages for him. You know, and I checked him out with city staff, and I checked him out with other neighborhood people and stuff. This guy's a good guy. He really is. So with that in mind, the board really wants to keep this guy here. To give you an idea of the area, over here is the old Target. Huge investment. Polk County just did an awesome building there, River Place. Up here, we've got Plaza Lanes and Trophies. Randy Thompson owns a lot of land in the area and a lot of businesses and everything. And in fact, we're undergoing the revitalization process in our neighborhood, and he is a key component as a business owner and stuff. He was very concerned about M1. I've reassured him about who the individual is. This is a trestle trail that runs up there. Alongside of it is the MLK green belt that the neighborhood developed without city funding or anything. It's the largest green belt in the city that's done that way, and it's almost a half-mile long. And where it ends is at the Thai Village, another awesome development in the area. The Lower Beaver neighborhood, a couple of years ago, was cited as the second most stable neighborhood in the city. But we're always improving. Of course, there's River Place. Here's our MLK Greenbelt. That's what it looks like all up and down it. There's 5 huge planting beds. I think there's 170 trees we planted along there. Here's a deal breaker in the neighborhood. Bowling guy goes away on the Plaza Lanes. Randy's got to leave. But here's Thai Village area. And this is right behind the subject property. That's Iowa State students that helped us plant even more trees that we have softened the front of the apartments on. And we have volunteers doing all kinds of things in the neighborhood. So why would we consider an M1 use in the area? Well, we like the applicant and we think we can control it. But what it has to do is go through this body and be denied. And it has to go to the city council being denied. It's kind of weird for him to get a variance to do the things he wants. He has to go this route. And he has to go against what's good for the neighborhood in the long run. So we've promised to help him when he gets to that point. Certainly M1 is going to make this very easy for him tonight. If you guys vote for M1, and the council does too, Ken gets to do what he wants. And he probably will have little impact on the neighborhood. But he's not going to want to do this forever, and he's not going to live forever. And it's too bad, because we need people like this around. We're not going to do anything to you, though. But what we really need to do is get a use variance. And we're going to have some good conditions, and things that the city, wants him to do, like landscaping and stuff, the neighborhood's going to do on the right-of-way. We're going to do on the other side of the building, too. Why should he have to cut up his property and his lot and take out parking just to put in landscaping? His back lot is the ultimate permeable paving, and yet the city's going to want him to pave it. With the use variance, we think we can get him to keep it as gravel, and we'll push real hard for it. So, the Lower Beaver Neighborhood Association wants you to vote to deny. As an individual, I urge you to think really hard about this. This is a good guy, and I would really like to see a recommendation come from this group that if you do vote it down, that you send on a recommendation to the council that the ultimate use is going to be a use variance, so we can get that through all the way to the Zoning Board of Adjustment with a good recommendation that this is the right thing for this property. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions? Good.
Could you write that motion down for us?
You know what? This is probably the shortest speech you've ever heard.
Yay.
And I got to say, this was a real education tonight, too. And it was coming back. And I watched each of you, and I know quite a few of you pretty well. And I was impressed with what you guys did and what you had to do tonight and everything and stuff. And I don't have a big corporation that doesn't want to get along. I've got a guy that I know, even if he loses, he's going to be a good neighbor to the neighborhood. All right, so with that.
Thanks, Brian.
Right.
Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none? You need an additional time? Okay. We're going to close the public hearing. Do we have a motion? Mike moves staff. Any discussion?
I guess I have a question for the applicant.
All right. Ask.
You do understand what Mr. Millard's proposing and what the staff is recommending, that we have to deny it here in order for you to get you understand all that?
I do.
Okay.
It's a quirky process, but that's what it is.
Yeah, we agree with you.
Everybody understand Mike's motion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation, Kathy. It passes. Thank you. Good luck. Number 5 was previously continued. We're going to move on to number 6, request from St. Gregory Centers Holdings LLC, represented by Michael Vasquez, for review and approval of the 7th Amendment to the Airport Commerce Park West PUD concept plan regarding property located at 6151 Thornton Avenue to allow conversion of 19,000 square feet of the existing 38,117 square feet building from retail restaurant use to a rehabilitation center where 6,000 square feet is proposed for general office use, 3,000 square feet is proposed for medical outpatient clinic use, and 10,000 square feet is proposed for a residential social detoxification use. The subject property is owned by Valley Bank. Jason, you're presenting on this one?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, sir.
The response cards are in a letter being passed around. Anyway, it's the boundary of the PUD, and then the notice area extends beyond the boundary of the PUD. This is subject property, 63rd Park Avenue, or the subject, the PUD. Here's a photograph of the specific building within the development. And then this is the sheet that we have for the concept plan, the update. This is an existing PUD This is a specific use. This use is not specifically mentioned within the PUD as it stands now. Therefore, it needs to go through this amendment process, which is really the same process as rezoning, but really the only change that's proposed here is specific to the language of allowed uses. We've reviewed the proposal. We think that it's in line with intent of the PUD and then also with the establishment of the designation and land use plan. We are recommending approval. We do have a list of conditions, but these are really, I'm not going to read through them because they're really housekeeping type additions with regard to notes on the PUD. They're not, such as identifying buildings that have been built since the original concept plan was approved. The applicant, I understand, talking to their engineer today, that they're comfortable with the staff recommendation.
Any questions? Any questions?
Jason, just to clarify, we are at 24% opposition is my recollection on this. And
it does require a supermajority council.
The council will require a 6/7 vote of the city council based on the percentage of opposition we did receive.
Thank you, Jason. Is the applicant here? Could you please have him come forward, give us your name and address?
I'm Mike Vasquez. I reside at 3807 Thornton Avenue. And we're requesting an amendment to the PUD. I know one of the comments I made during the neighborhood meeting, which we held December 13th, and I think there were 17 people that walked into the room, probably against the recommendation. And it was interesting after we had the discussion that they did vote unanimously to support it. The reason being is the way the recommendation reads, St. Gregory Holdings owns several types of facilities. We own health clubs, we own medical clinics, as well as substance abuse facilities with about 100 beds from Spirit Lake down through western Iowa. When I first read this, because I belong to the neighborhood association, I actually was going to vote against it, then I realized it was me. And the reason for that is the fact that there is not a proposed rehabilitation facility for this property. We are purchasing this property for our medical practices, which provide services to Iowa health systems, and it will be a corporate office, as well as an additional medical facility, which provides medical services. And as part of that, the state calls, under the licensing of part of this, social detoxification. Internally, it's a medical stabilization unit. We have a very unique, actually it's the only facility like it in the U.S., where 80% of our patients fly in from LA, Dallas, Miami, and New York just to come to this facility. It's currently located in Adair, Iowa. Because of growth, we've had to relocate it. We run a shuttle to the Des Moines airport every day for these people to come to this facility. They're located there during their stabilization period for 2 to 5 days, and at that point they're then transported to a rehabilitation facility. But these people are too ill to actually enter a rehabilitation facility. So as part of our medical clinic growth, we're actually opening a network of medical clinics across the U.S., and this will primarily be utilized as a corporate headquarters for our medical clinics that will be operated across the U.S. So with that, I'll be open to answer any questions. I think that summarizes and clarifies any misunderstandings that might be in the recommendation.
So what's going to happen on site, Mike?
Currently on site, the site that's under, the portion that's under question, I think, is in the social detoxification is a medical unit, doctors and nurses, stabilizing patients in about 10,000 square feet. We're purchasing the entire property, and we're going to they'll be there for 2 to 5 days under the care of doctors and nurses during this stabilization period. About 5,000 square feet for corporate headquarters for the medical clinic operation, and then actually a medical clinic for growth, because we have a medical clinic currently across the street from Valley High School, and that's already going to be operating at capacity, so we're looking to increase or add an additional clinic at this location.
Did you say something about an affiliation with Iowa Health? Did I hear that?
We provide medical services now for their patients. That's just one example. Large employers in the Des Moines area also.
Right. I was reading the cards as they were going by while you were talking, so I didn't pick up everything, so I'm sorry to
Yeah, and my point is that the people who tended to not understand read it literally as they saw that, and as I did, and took it that there's going to be a 20,000 square foot drug rehabilitation center built there. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Any other questions?
I have one. Mike, there will be or will not be, I guess I'm asking the question, outpatient services or counseling there available on a regular basis?
When we talk about outpatient, again, it may be semantics, but it's from a medical clinic aspect. So some of these people that are coming to the medical clinic, this is not licensed as a substance abuse treatment. That clinic does not provide. As a matter of fact, we screen patients and then refer them off to substance abuse treatment in that clinic.
Okay.
So there is screening, but then they are referred on.
Understood.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward. In favor of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. In opposition? Likewise, seeing none. You need rebuttal time for yourself? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Tim?
I'll move staff.
All right. Staff's been moved. Any discussion, questions?
Not a question, some comment. I'm going to abstain on this just because I'm involved in this industry, so I certainly use this industry.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairperson, I just want to make a comment. I'm sure that Mr. Vasquez heard the laughter roar when you made mention about something coming before your neighborhood association and that you were a member. My heart was made glad. There is still hope. When people stay involved in their neighborhoods and they know what's going on and they come and they hear firsthand, it makes a huge difference in the outcome. It makes our job a lot easier. Thank you.
So all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation, one abstention. You get that? It passes. Thank you. I know. Item number 7, request from ST Howard Development, represented by Steve Howard, for approval of a preliminary minor subdivision plat, 4111 Towanda, on property located at 4111 Towanda Drive, to subdivide the 2.54 acre property into 1.79 acre parcel with existing single-family dwelling on a .078 acre parcel. Subject property is owned by Susan, can't read it, Malhoff. Okay.
Chairman,
Jason, you
Commission.
presenting on this one? Thank you.
Yes, there's an aerial identifying the property on Tonawanda Drive near the Salisbury House, 42nd Street to the west. This is generally from the road. You can kind of see the house. And this is the drive back up in the area. The house tucks back this way in the Salisbury House. And then this is from the Salisbury House parking lot looking back into the site. So here's the proposed plat. The driveway access back to the existing property. There would be shared an easement to provide access to this property so they wouldn't have to try to negotiate the grades that are a little more challenging here. The one thing to point out here is that, you know, these lots meet zoning and stuff. The reason this is before you is essentially because of to extend a water main to this lot, which is within the vicinity, but it's not. It will have to happen. It does require a preliminary plat that comes before you. If that line had been in place, this would have been done through our plat of survey process administratively. In reviewing this, really we only had one note that we wanted to have added to the plat. You know, it's a wooded lot. It is subject to our tree mitigation ordinance, but in addition, we have a note that we are recommending be added to the plat that basically states that no tree removal or grading shall occur on the site until such time that a plot plan for the future consideration of a single-family dwelling and driveway has been approved by the planning administrator. The plot plan shall minimize any necessary tree removal and shall identify tree preservation and mitigation measures and shall protect views from the adjoining Salisbury House property to a reasonable extent. So that, along with our typical compliance with administrative review type comments from the engineering part of the public work, or excuse me, Permanent Development Center, are our two conditions.
Any questions? CJ?
Has a neighborhood weighed in on this or anything, or is this not, they not notified, or, I mean, I think this is a huge project for being this close to Salisbury House and a large amount of land, and I don't see anybody here that, unless you guys are, oh, you're the applicant, okay. So I just wondered, you know, if the neighborhood had been notified.
Yeah, in the staff report, the property is located in the Salisbury Oaks neighborhood, and they were notified of the commission meeting by the mailing of the preliminary agenda November 30th. And the final agenda was mailed to them on the December 14th. And that was sent to the Jed Mingle. It must be the neighborhood representative.
We did not do individual notices,
No.
though. It's not required on a plat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jason?
Nope.
Thank you. The applicant, please come forward, give us your name and address.
Good evening, Shane Devick with Civil Engineering Consultants located at 2400 86th Street in Urbandale. I think staff did a pretty good job summarizing this project. The only thing I would want to explain that we do have to bring the water main down, and that is why we were here, you know, before you on this item. We do agree to staff's conditions of approval, and if you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Shane, I'm
Yes.
just where the water main's coming from. I'm starting to do a little punch drunk here.
Okay. Let's see.
Be glad, Jack, this isn't one of the late meetings, by the way.
This, the yellow, the outside is the original lot. This is our proposed lot that Tom would like to build on. We have to, there are no water mains along this road at all. It's an unusual, very unusual situation. In order to put another house here, we need to bring water main from here down and put a hydrant in here, and then services up into these lots.
This has nothing, thank you. This has nothing to do with really the request at all, but I'm interested. Was this land originally part of the parcel at Salisbury House and had been subsequently then sold off, or is this a parcel that emerged on its own?
It's, I do not know that it was part of the Salisbury House. It has an existing residence on it that's been there, I believe, since the 50s.
Yeah, I can address that. It was, since I chair the Salisbury House Foundation Board.
I think he was baiting you, Mike.
This was part of the original estate, and this home that's going to remain, most of it, was built by a son of Carl and Edith Weeks named Hud Weeks. And it's two Lustron homes that were tied together. And it's still pretty much intact. But yeah, it was originally part of the estate, but I think it was parceled off a long time ago, so.
And the Lustrums are to remain on this lot here. The purchaser of that lot would determine what they would want to do with them. They're in a state of disrepair, but they could fix them up if they so chose.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward in favor of the application. Seeing none, since there are only 2 people in the room. Is there anyone here in opposition to the application? In opposition to the application? Likewise, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Greg, move staff. Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. CJ, are you not voting?
I didn't get to vote there. I'm for it.
Okay. So,
You want to stick?
opposed, CJ?
CJ, are you in opposition or? Oh, my stars.
Do you
You know-
folks realize you're being recorded?
You know, back in the old days, these used to run until about 10 o'clock at night.
Was she opposed?
Let's do that again. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Here we go. All right. Opposed, same sign, and 1 abstention. So it's acclamation with 1 abstention. That takes care of our agenda. Director, you have the floor briefly.
Just probably CJ, I think, is her report. Next meeting would be the slate, nomination slate for your officers for next year, and then you would vote the first meeting in February according to your bylaws, so. Okay. So 2 weeks. 2 weeks is the next meeting, the 17th.
I am willing to handle it.
All right. Excellent. 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 Greg? Arno? All right. That's good. Anything else?
Paving, parking lot paving.
Anything else for the good of the group? Seeing none, we're adjourned.